Right, let's try that.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear me
I can.
now?
How's that?
Lovely. Yep, perfect.
Good stuff.
Right, how is my picture for you?
Yeah, it's fine.
All good? Sound okay?
Absolutely
Everything sound
fine.
good?
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
I'm trying this Riverside. This is only the second one I've done using this Riverside. I don't know if you've ever used it before.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've never used it. No.
Right. Well, I always used to use Zoom, and the problems I found with Zoom was that my internet connection can be a bit iffy sometimes. So that then affects the recording. You end up with Keek audio and Keek video and all this.
Sure.
Riverside, apparently, it is all like browser side. So it's basically it's your camera and your mic recording your video and your audio at your side, and it does mine at my side, and then it uploads the best quality from both once we finish.
Yeah, I'm with you. So rather than you having to effectively record all data from both sides,
yeah,
it's like we're sharing. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so it's still quite new to me, so I'm just like, shit, is it all working?
Well, I have to apologise really because this is our sort of outside. We call it the shed stension, and we're currently renovating some bits inside the house. So the house is now in the shed stension. So TV, ladders, just shit everywhere.
Right, no dramas at all. I'm in a cabin at the bottom of the garden, so.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, this is usually my workshop into the garage, and this is my wife's office kind of thing. Gotcha. But yeah, as I say, at the moment, everything's from the house is dumped out here. So this is life, right?
At all. Yeah, exactly. And that's what this is, mate. This is I don't edit. I don't butter things up at all. Obviously, if anything goes horrendously wrong, then or you think you've said something that might cause World War III, you can let me know and we can edit that out. But generally, it is just as it comes. So,
well, I took your cue earlier, and I'm pouring myself I'm pouring myself an out-of-date IPA that I pinched from the fridge at work. So
good work. I'll join you in that. I think this one's in date, actually. I've got a garage full of out-of-date beer, so
cheers. Cheers.
Just to your health. All right, dude, are you happy just to crack on? Are you happy for us to have started?
Easy.
And this is us, mate. And we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, lovely.
Absolutely.
Folks at home, folks listening, folks watching, this is Adam Wight from Bikes for Brains. How you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Cheers for having me.
Awesome. Not mate, absolute pleasure. I only literally just came across your stuff a couple of weeks ago, so it's great to get you on for a chat.
Yeah, well, it's early days, and probably the case with many of us. It's been something that I've sort of been thinking about doing for some time. But as I'm sure we'll get into, sort of the driving force or motivation behind this channel is something that just takes a bit of like being ready for, if that makes sense. Excuse me. So, for one reason or another, it's taken me a while to kind of get round to it, but here we are having a crack.
This week we are supported by Dual Bike Training. Dual Bike Training offers bespoke motorcycle coaching that suits your needs. Based in the Northwest, Dual Bike Training can offer anything from back-to-biking refreshers to full on-road coaching programs built around you. Find Dual Bike Training at dualbiketraining.co.uk. That's Dual, Jewell, biketraining.co.uk, or on X as at Dual Training and Instagram at Dual Bike Training. Neil holds all the top advanced motorcycle certificates from ROSPA, IAM and BMF. He also volunteers for Cheshire Bike Safe. He's a qualified lecturer in engineering, so you're going to be in safe hands. Have a read of his testimonials at the website dualbiketraining.co.uk/testimonials. Ride smoother, faster, sharper. A massive thanks to Dual Bike Training for your support.
Lovely job. So what's your story then? Like, what's the story? What's brought you here to where you are with Bikes for Brains?
Oh, man. Well, it's funny when you're talking about yourself, isn't it? Because you've told the story a few times and you think, does anyone actually want to hear this? Which is actually part of the bigger imposter syndrome piece, I think. But,
perfectly natural, man. Perfectly natural.
I mean, I guess the story really is I was a pretty... kind of awkward kid that didn't fit in when I was younger, and did a lot of kind of like searching as a child. And a very long story short, I didn't really fit in with mainstream sports when I was younger. I did a bit of rugby and a bit of footy, but it never really like lit my fire, you know. And I found cycling in my early teens, and kind of offered this, I don't know, a level of escapism, I guess, that I couldn't find in your more conventional sports. And that kind of led on when I eventually got to the age where I could ride a motorbike. That led on to motorbiking. I sort of passed my test in my, I think I was 20 or 21 when I passed my full test. And that kind of just stirred up all sorts of adventures with pals, and traveled around Scandinavia for a month, and I disappeared to the Alps for weeks, and loads of like within the UK adventures. And then my whole 20s really was spent either doing a bit of motorcycling or predominantly a lot of mountain biking. I got into the race scene. I met my now wife. We traveled quite a bit, and we did a lot of racing all over the world, really. And I struck a job freelance writing and testing for magazines, for mountain bike magazines, testing bikes, writing stories, etc., etc. And that landed me into the bike world, where that's my day job. I've been in the bicycle industry for over a decade. And anyway, where this amalgamation comes together really was, I always kind of knew in my early 20s through relationships with people that there was something that just would rear its ugly head sometimes, and I'd be a lot of panic, a lot of confusion, a lot of overwhelm, but then like I just didn't know what it was. And you know, I come from a fairly conventional family in terms of like emotions aren't always talked about, etc., etc. And I just didn't really know what that was, and I did a lot of suppression of that stuff all through my 20s, and chased exercise and partying and alcohol and all the rest of it as kind of escapism, as so many of us do. And then basically my wife and I were trying to move to New Zealand, to emigrate to New Zealand, basically. And about 8 months before we were due to leave, I just had what I obviously now know very well as like a full-blown panic attack, you know, like cold sweats, terrified, trying to run away. You know, it was horrendous. Anyway, that went on solidly for about 6 months, and my life kind of just, my life as I knew it kind of fell apart, really. And as a guy dealing with these sort of emotions, as I'm sure you're aware, and some of your listeners will be, it's a hard road to navigate, because we're not taught to be in touch with those sorts of feelings as a guy, especially. Yeah. And I found that really hard to kind of come to terms with and express. And it was hard to seek help. And when you're used to being this person who's kind of like, I now know that I have covered up many of this stuff with a bit of an alpha personality, because that's very often how people that are suppressing emotion kind of outwardly, you know, appear to the world, should I say?
Yeah. Overly confident. Yeah.
Right. And so as a person that all of a sudden lost that confidence, it was a terrifying time. I lost myself entirely, you know, and so basically that was, I'm 40 this year. That was sort of nearly 10 years ago when that started. And what that started me on was a road of soul searching, really. The last 10 years have been a real journey of discovery, as cliche as that sounds. But bikes for me have, I don't say this lightly, like bikes have saved my life on more than one occasion. And I wanted to sort of, partly I wanted to try and use my story and other people's stories that I'm hopefully going to tell as a force for good, to bring other people like myself, just a regular guy trying to find their way, and girls, but I guess predominantly guys, because I'm a guy and lots of us struggle with it and don't know how to convey that emotions into words. So I wanted to use this sort of opportunity as a force for good, but also whilst just sharing some very similar to some of the great stuff you've put out. Just good times on two wheels, really. But allowing people into the real behind that, as to like the struggle that is going on. I put a little video out last week. The first one that was really it's called Bikes and Brains. I'd really appreciate it if some of your listeners wanted to go and have a look. It's the first foray into the floodgates of my brain opening up. And as classic, removing any of the YouTube algo issues with a new channel, the feedback that I had was just overwhelmingly positive, and that kind of just made me think, yeah, shit, I've got to do this, however little the viewings might be, at least at the moment, and maybe in the future. It's just, if I can convey the importance of getting out with your friends on bikes and what that's brought to my life positively, then mission accomplished, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, there you go. Sorry, verbal diarrhea, but
We are also supported this week by the Influencer Store. Now, the Influencer Store helps you build your brand big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design, and there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. Now, if you head to TeapotOne.com, if you have a look at any of the merch available over there, that is all handled by Roger and Charlotte and the team over at the Influencer Store. A massive thanks to them for their ongoing support.
No, mate, no, absolutely. I think. Well, let's go back to that first video that you just spoke about. Obviously, it's not the first video on your channel, but it's the first one with you, like this new sense of direction, Bikes for Brains. I watched that, and it was what's the word? Interesting's not the word. It was really sort of heartwarming to hear just your honesty coming across there. Like you had no script there. You were just ad-libbing as you went.
Yeah.
And you were finding it hard to deal with, weren't you? As you listen to yourself open up about the issues that you faced and you deal with, you could see that you were struggling with that as well. And honestly, mate, that sort of openness and almost humbleness, if you don't mind me saying, but that honesty that you're purveying to people, that's what's gonna attract your community, and that's what will grow your channel for sure. And I'll leave links down below, folks, if you want to check that vid out for sure.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And I think the beauty of this, right, is like I have a day job. I'm a technical communications manager for a bike brand, and there's no, this wasn't necessarily a motivation where like, shit, I have to find another avenue in life necessarily. I mean, who knows what the future holds, and I'm open to that, but I think the real beauty is that I kind of come into this with no real preconceived ideas as to what this may or may not become. I happen to thoroughly enjoy telling stories. Like my thing is communication. Like that's what I've done, whether it be writing for magazines or whether it be, I do quite a bit of video for work now, and so I enjoy telling a story and helping other people tell a story anyway, whether that be in words or verbally. So I guess I'm fortunate that I enjoy that anyway. And I just thought that, there's so many of my friends that have had hard times, and I tell you, mate, the amount of people that messaged me last week that were like, oh, I've got this, we had this situation where like, someone messaged me last week saying, oh, I follow you. I ride bikes. I ride motorbikes. I ride mountain bikes. And the two brothers that were my best friends, one of the brothers took his own life a few years ago. And, how would you feel about telling our story about how bikes kept us together and gave us a purpose again?
Yeah.
So that's one of a handful of people that messaged me. My best mate that you may have seen, we're doing the Rally Moto Icebreaker Challenge this winter, and my best mate, one of the guys, Matt, that I ride with, he got over pretty almost not making it leukemia. And now I ride with him. He's got 2 false hips where the chemo and the radiotherapy kind of just wrecked his joints. And he's 33 years old, 34 years old now. And he's this double hip replacement guy that's out just riding motorbikes around the country. And like, you know, I can feel myself. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about the inspiration of these people, you know? So I just thought, look, you know, like I can relate to some of these struggles. Why the hell do we not just tell some stories with that humbleness and honesty that I think is just, it gets lost quite often in not just YouTube, but in television or entertainment in general. So I just thought, I'll tell you a really quick story. Matt won't mind me telling you this, but when he was in hospital having, he just had a bone marrow transplant, right? And they have this thing called. Sorry, Matt, if I'm absolutely butchering this story, by the way, because he'll watch this, right? And when I see it, we're actually doing the last 2 of the icebreaker challenges up in the North Yorkshire moors and the peaks. So I'm gonna this weekend. So I'm gonna tell him I told this story, and he'll either rip me a new one over it. But anyway, he'd had this bone marrow transplant, and they have this thing I think called graft versus host disease, where the bone marrow is from someone else, and his immune system, what's left of it, attacks, fights it, and they never really know where it's going to come out in the body. It can be all sorts of things, and one of the things with Matt, it attacked his digestive tract, but from his lips to his butt, basically, that everything just blistered internally, and he couldn't eat food. Geez. He had to have a feeding tube in, and the reason I'm telling you this, there's a crescendo, there's an ending coming to this, is when people are sick and struggling, sometimes it brings out the most sort of humble, honest ability to laugh at one's situation that is so like humbling as an onlooker, right? Because we walk around with our ego sort of guard on sometimes, but when you've got nothing left to lose, sometimes that's when real like honesty and integrity is kind of shown. And I remember Matt sending me a photo of an area of his body that you wouldn't show in public, shall we say. And everything around there was just really like red, raw and sore. And I just remember this moment where like this guy is literally on death's door, right? But like, it's making me like emotional just thinking about it. But he's sending me a photo laughing about his situation. So I think for me, arcing back to when sorry, I've gone off on a tangent there because I'm sort of passionate about it.
Don't worry about it. This is just a conversation. Don't worry.
When I did this video last week, the reason I was struggling with it, I think, is because there's the imposter chimp that's telling me how I should be talking to the audience. And then there's that part of me that remembers the photo that Matt sent me when he was like, had nothing left to lose, when I just thought, people just want to see you, you know, that's the reality of this. That's how people relate when they actually get a feeling for, that could be me. So when I watched that video back, it's probably the first time I've watched a video back of myself and actually been like, I'm proud of you. You know, I'm proud of that attempt at being real, you know? It was cool. It was cool.
I've always said to people who, if anyone's ever asked me any advice for like YouTube channels and you know how do you come over more confident on camera, how do you talk better when you're on, all these sorts of things, I just say to people, just be you. If you're quite reserved, then it doesn't matter, be reserved on camera. If you're quite quiet, be quite quiet. If you haven't got an extensive vocabulary, who gives a fuck? Be you, and you will attract your community, because that's what people connect with. Is they look at that persona, and it's one of a few things, isn't it? They're entertaining, they entertain me, they make me laugh. I can relate to that person, and then they'll invest into it. You know what I mean? So
I do.
I always said that people aren't thick. People sniff out bullshit. So if you try to be a persona that you're not, there'll come a time when that persona will drop. It'll fall. And the real you will come across on camera. And if people are used to this persona, they might not like that real you, and then you lose people. Whereas if you're just you, that's it. You're just you. You say what you think, and off you go. That's how I do it anyway, and it's
no. I mean,
good so far.
Absolutely, and do you know what I was watching. Sorry, I can't remember the guy's name, but you had a podcast with a guy that was traveling on a motorbike, and he was saying how you will find your audience. You just need to put out the stuff you're passionate about, and you will find your audience. And you know, I was thinking about this when I was driving home from Tuesdays and Thursdays. I quite often go to our office, so I have quite a long drive home. And when I was driving home earlier, I was just thinking about our conversation. And the thing that really struck me, Bruce, was that like I'm not here to put on, similarly to you, like I'm not fussed about putting out these sort of like 30-40 second clickbait YouTube videos that get a load of views but actually have no substance to it. Like I'm going to put out stuff that I feel offers a few hundred people something. And do you know what? Like you just rightly said, like people will find me. I'm not in any hurry necessarily. I'd rather have, and I think people value this in the long run, right? Like it's better to have 10,000 truly engaged individuals rather than like 500,000 people that they're just interested in like watching 15 seconds and move on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Numbers are just ego. It's all the numbers mean.
Right.
Right. Obviously it's nice to have a load of people following, but it's just an ego thing. That's all that is.
That video I put out last week, I think it only has like, I don't know, 400 views or something, but I think it had like 45 comments, so like, 10% of the people watching that video sent me some sort of positive interaction, So that for me was, it was just awesome. So, the channel, as you see, as some of your viewers will see, it's basically been, I'm going to try and, I'm doing something maybe as far as YouTube would be concerned as risky, because it's not going to be motorcycle 100%. It's going to be like, it'll be a multi-discipline channel. It is very much about bikes for brains. And that is, I ride a fair bit of trials moto. I ride a bit of enduro. I ride the big bike, the adventure bike. I do a lot of mountain biking. So there's going to be a lot of just 2-wheel action on there. And I'm just going to see how it goes, right?
We are also supported by Ultimate Add-ons. Old Faithful been with me from the very start. Ultimate Add-ons are the premium manufacturer of mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for motorcycles. With a kit for any bike and a proven track record of creating products that keep your devices safe, secure and easily accessible, the Ultimate Add-ons product range is ideal for any rider, from the commuter to the round-the-world adventurer. Why shell out on an expensive GPS system when you could use your smartphone, keeping it charged and within reach to take photos of your travels at the same time? Ultimate Add-ons waterproof, shockproof and dustproof tough cases are available for all flagship smartphone models and are designed by riders for riders. Find out why Ride Magazine gives Ultimate Add-ons their coveted Best Buy certification. Keep riding this winter with Ultimate Add-ons. It's all about the journey. Now, if you head to their website, ultimateaddons.com, use the code TeapotOne10, so that's TeapotOne, TeapotOne, with the number 10 at the end, that'll get you 10% off. A big shout out to Ultimate Add-ons for their continued support.
Honestly, mate, I think the days of really niching down, the last few years, all the YouTube gurus have said is niche down, niche down, niche down. I think they're gone. I really do think they're gone. The algorithm changed last year, big time. Really did change big time. Oh yeah, and it's now almost beneficial to be a much smaller channel than a bigger channel. Believe it or not,
is that right?
Because the algorithm, whether it's the algorithm looking for smaller channels as something fresh, or if it's just people, the end users, if they're maybe starting to cast their net a little bit wider. Because apparently the way the algorithm works is the algorithm doesn't push you out. what it does is it sucks the videos into you.
Okay.
So the algorithm doesn't look at me in the vid I'm putting out and goes, right, this vid will fit all that. It looks at you as an end user and goes, right, well, these are the sort of things that you're watching, you're searching, all that. These are the sort of things that we detect give you the most engagement, keep you on the channel the longest. Yeah. And it just casts its net out there and goes, okay, well, this vid will fit him, this vid will fit them, and just brings them all in. It's not like an outward thing, it's an inward thing. It's a sucking in type of thing, apparently, allegedly.
Okay.
But back to my point, it seems to be that smaller channels are getting certainly pushed more or promoted more on the platform. And I just think it comes down to what's the content like, not specifically what's the content about, but how does it affect the person that's watching it. It doesn't really matter what's in it. If it keeps people on the video and then on the platform for as long as possible, and then it gets likes, it gets shares, it gets engagement through comments and all this sort of stuff, then the algorithm is going to promote that. It's going to be a positive result.
Sure.
No matter what's in the vid, you could be juggling 1 minute and singing the opera at the next. It doesn't really matter. If it's engaging, then it's going to do well.
Okay.
Plus, for you, the biking niche, the motorcycle niche is very small anyway. It's a particular specialist niche within a very small niche. So by casting the net that little bit wider for you onto the push bikes and the various disciplines in amongst that, you're casting your net as wide as possible.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me, mate, is that it's always going to arch back to the relationships and the freedom and the expression of yourself amongst your friends. That's for me, that's the grounding force of all of this. So, there are like the icebreaker videos that I've put up so far. That is very much like Matt, Tim, another one of our pals, and I just pissing around on bikes, really. So there's no talking there about mental health, really, other than that you can clearly see we have like a sort of vulnerable dynamic with one another, and I say that jokingly because as a guy, you'll know exactly what I mean. Like especially as a Scot, that real friends just ream each other out constantly, right? Like,
absolutely.
That's how you know that you like each other. Totally. Funny story, actually. One of my pals who's a biker, and I ride trials with him, he a few years ago, moved to the area that my wife and I live in. And we were at a party one evening around a friend's house. And because he knew everyone, but his fiance at the time had not met the group of friends. And anyway, beers are flowing, and then the whiskey comes out, and we're all having a sing along and having a right old laugh. And then at the end of the night, his fiance is half cut, and I'm a bit drunk, and she leans over to me and she says, "Do you like each other?" So I said, "No, we don't. We actually love each other."
So Adam, sorry mate, your audio broke there to me.
Oh, sorry.
Could you go back? What was it that you said?
So she leant over to me and said to me, "Do you like each other?" So I said, "No, we actually love each other." And she said, "You love each other? What do you mean? Like, you literally are just bullying each other constantly." And I was like, "That's how you know that we love each other," because
absolutely.
it was just constant, right? So there's a lot of that's going to go on some of these sort of adventures with my pals. Just complete constant piss taking,
Yeah, absolutely. Like some of my best mates, I might not see them for years.
Yeah.
When you do see them again, you slag them off straight away, and it's like those 5 years, 10 years have never existed. You're straight back into the old relationship that you used to have.
Yeah.
Right, this one's for you lot. Everyone that's watching, everyone that's listening, you're all helping to support the podcast, and I can't thank you enough. Every time that you like it, every time that you listen to it, download it, watch it, every time you give it a thumbs up, when you subscribe or follow the podcast on any platform that you happen to be consuming it on, every time you tell someone about it and they then go and do it, it all helps massively. And it's you guys that have helped push Brewtime up there to the top 5% of podcasts globally. My mind is blown. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love it, man. as I'm getting older and I'm sort of learning a bit more about myself and trying to working hard to sort of drop the veil of ego. Actually, I've got a little another part 2 of bikes and brain talk coming out next week, where I actually just start to discuss the term ego a little bit while I'm out biking. And I think for me, as I'm getting older and I'm really trying to let that ego veil down, the more I realize that just, you've got to stop taking yourself so seriously, like, because I'm guilty of that. Like sometimes I take things too seriously and I realize that actually that's an ego thing, like feel insulted or I'm scared or whatever. And I understand that ego originally was there when we were in the cave to make you feel like you were important enough to survive, to run away. Right. But like, right. I think in this modern world with interactions and relationships, it's just not required in the same vein, So the more I let that guard down, the more I just seem to find the funny side of things, especially when it comes to related to oneself, because it is funny, we are funny. Humans are funny.
Yeah, definitely. I think most people have that issue, like self-confidence, maybe sometimes being overconfident, certainly ego for sure, in I certainly feel it now. I'm full time at all this malarkey. I would say I probably have daily battles with my ego in the terms of, you look at content other people within this niche produce. Even some of my mates that have channels, they're probably bigger channel. Well, they are bigger channels than I've got, and some are about the same, whatever. But you look at their channels and how they perform, how many subs they've got, how many views they're getting, what launch they've been invited to. You do look at it, and there's part of me that kind of goes, "Oh God, I would, I want that." But again, it's your ego, isn't it? It's your ego, and you got to keep that in check and just go.
Man, it is, and
fine, swallow it. Let's move on. If you want to improve, how are you going to improve? They're obviously working harder than you.
Couldn't agree more, man. And I read a fair bit. I listen to quite a few podcasts, and something I was listening to the other day, someone said that comparison is the thief of joy. And I just thought, because like you, I do the same, right? Like there's comparisons on a daily basis, and I think in this modern world, comparison is so fucking easy, right? Like it's just you're bombarded with it constantly. But it really is the thief of joy, because you're comparing quite often. You're comparing not necessarily maybe in the vein that you were just discussing with other YouTube channels, but we quite often compare ourselves. Firstly, we don't know anyone's lives because we just see a snapshot of it. Yeah. And sometimes we're comparing ourselves to people's lives that we don't even want to live. So why are we comparing ourselves to them,
Yeah.
And
we're assuming that what they're portraying is actually real, as well. Because people can live the dream on camera, but behind camera, they're not living that dream.
100%. Yeah. I think dropping the ego is very much easier said than done, of course. But I think if you're just aware of it, I allude to in this video, I allude to giving some of the viewers some homework, which is, as a guy, I guess, again, because I think it is harder for guys in this area of life. Actually, another topic of conversation, which isn't bike related, but I think it's becoming harder and harder to be a man in this modern world, if I'm totally honest.
I mean, like these days, what is a man these days?
Oh, dude, I really don't know. And you and I very briefly the other day, we're probably going to get machine gun like down for what I'm about to say here. But I'm not going to go into it too much. But we very briefly talked about the whole woke movement the other day. And the thing what I will say about it, without getting too deeply into the politics, is that the path to hell is so often paved with good intentions, right? So some things come about in order to defend a minority, and I'm all for that shit, man. I really am. But sometimes things just don't stop; they just keep going the other way, and then they end up being discriminative in the pure nature that the reason they came around in the first place. So I think right now, being a guy and being tough, being having a strong opinion on things, being able to look after your family, defend yourself and be manly, but whilst also being vulnerable and showing emotion is a dichotomy that I just, I despair with the way things are right now, because it's so hard as a man to be all of those things, right? So, hey, maybe I can do a little bit of that, and you and I are doing a little bit of that now, and maybe there's an opportunity to lead by example a little bit, and
but then
ride bikes along the way. I mean,
exactly, but it's never, more than ever, you have to be particularly careful about what you say in online content in this country, in the UK. The UK is cracking down on that. You need to watch what you say. And I'm not talking about being discriminatory or rude or hate speech or anything like hate speech. I mean, what I think you and I would regard as hate speech, other people regard what I think are just simple comments as hate speech now. And it's like, where's the, when did all this happen? You know what I mean?
I know.
I'm all for tolerance. I'm tolerant of anyone as long as you're not being an utter, see you next Tuesday in your actions. Right. I think people should be allowed to be a good human. Yeah, be tolerant of other people. Be polite. Be courteous. Well, I'm not a religious man in the slightest, but the 10 Commandments, that's sort of basic sort of stuff, isn't it? Be polite, don't kill, don't harm, don't steal.
Weren't they originally written, let's be honest, as a code of conduct, most probably.
Except for a civilized community, society.
Right, and I think something that has changed a lot actually is I'm quite interested in like Stoic philosophy, like some of the things that the Romans lived by, and one of the things that really always sticks in my mind is that man, they always refer to man or woman, whatever, suffers more in imagination than in reality, and I think the reality of that statement is that our ability to accept that if we are insulted or upset by someone else's comment, that is a reflection on my interpretation of that situation, not necessarily. And now, don't get me wrong, sometimes people are just being arseholes, and they are arseholes. But majority of the time, if my offence comes from something that someone else has said, I probably need to look within and decide whether actually I need to be hurt by that statement or not. And 9 times out of 10, I don't, because, look, I've got a life to live, and I've got my own shit going on inside my own head that I need to deal with. Why do I need something else to fluster over, right? So I just think that we are not being taught that other people's actions, and I will caveat this, as I said, it's not always the case. Sometimes people are just arseholes, but a lot of the time, a really shit situation is an opportunity for you to do something else or look at it a different way, right? And I'm not good at this all the time, but I'm trying,
And lastly, a huge shout out to all of you over in the clan on Patreon. You folks have supported me since I took the leap to do this all full time way back in 2020. I literally could not do this without you. To this day, I couldn't do it without your support. So heartfelt thank you. Your questions are the bedrock of the podcast here at Brewtime. And your support really does mean the world. Folks, if you fancy getting involved with the clan, head to patreon.com/TeapotOne and come and join the fun. We do live streams that are only for the clan over on Patreon. I do meetups purely for the clan as well. They are normally UK based, but this year we're pushing a little bit further afield. Again, details are available over on the TeapotOne Patreon page and also in our private little Facebook group that we've got. Be great to have you along. If it's something that you think tickles your fancy, check it out. Patreon.com/TeapotOne. And to existing clanners, thank you very much. Right, let's get back to it.
You've got to try.
My personal opinion on all this is I think freedom of speech is essential. We should, everyone across the board should have freedom of speech. You should be allowed to say what you want, I think, personally. And if that incites violence towards another, then you need to be dealt with. You need to we have laws in place anyway to deal with all this stuff. So you will face the force of the law for saying that.
Yeah,
However, I still think you should be allowed to say what you think, because that's how you know people. That's how you go, all right, well, those ones over there have that viewpoint. I don't align with that. I don't agree with that. And you can either have it out with them and confront them, or you can just go, I'll keep them to the side. I'm not going to engage with them. These people over here, I like what they're saying. I feel an affinity with this. That's my community. That's my tribe. You know what I mean? And if
I do,
If you do what seems to have been going on for the last 5-10 years, where people are getting hounded for their opinions, all you do is you force that underground. And that's where extremism comes from. That's when the far left, the far right, that's when all of that builds and builds and builds. And you get to a station where we're at now, where there is an underlying real movement, I would say, a dangerous movement to one extreme, I would say, at the moment. And I think that might boil over at some point in the next few years.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, like we could. The thing with politics is people will be laughing at us, I'm sure, because like everyone has an opinion on politics, right? But
of course,
the thing for me is that far left or far right is fascism. It doesn't matter whether you are a far right believer or a far left believer. An extreme in either end of that spectrum is still fascist. So my personal view is that you just need a bit of all of this in order to freedom of speech and ability to embrace other people's views from somewhere along that spectrum is actually and anyway, look, we're not going to change this, you know, but at the end of the day, mate, it is a difficult time as a guy to be honest, to be an honest man about wanting to be tough and wanting to be not alpha, but like I truly believe we need society to have men to be protective and strong and have opinions. I live with my wife. I live with a woman who is an absolute powerhouse, you know, like she rides motorbikes. She was top 10 in the UK on a mountain bike once upon a time. She's an ex-police officer. Like, I'm stood here as a guy saying it's important to be a tough guy. I live with a tough woman, but she doesn't have a problem with me being a tough guy as well. Do you know what I mean? So she doesn't feel intimidated by that. We work together. She takes the masculine elements of me and I take the feminine elements of her, and we create a team. So I think it's important to have all of those parts. And I really want to touch on this in the channel as I move forward about, like, it's okay to be a guy and be all of those things, to be tough, to be masculine, to be strong, to have opinions, but also be able to stand in front of me and cry and tell me that you're fucking struggling. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I totally agree with you. And that I also take the viewpoint that model doesn't work for everybody. You know, there's plenty of blokes out there who you know, they're not an alpha, or they don't want to take that strong role within a relationship or within society. Fine, if it's not you, fine, don't worry about it, because if it's not you, you're not going to be that role model anyway, are you? Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
But if you are, then I totally agree. It's important to know, where do you fit in society and how do you express that? Because
and how do you
don't want someone coming out. Yeah. You don't want someone coming out being a Genghis Khan or however you pronounce his name. You don't want someone to come out and be like an utter tyrant. But you know, sometimes you do need you need a bloke, someone to stand up and be. It feels weird talking like this, doesn't
I know, right?
it?
Yeah.
But it's true.
It does.
You need someone, generally always a bloke, to come forward and be that leader and take the bull by the horns and deal with the situation.
Yeah. I think it's
difficult because it's not always the bloke. Sometimes it is the woman. Sometimes it is the woman. My missus is exactly like your missus. You know, she's a very strong, confident person. She's a copper. She carries a gun for a living. She's got bigger guns than I used to carry when I was in the old bill. You know, but again, my missus in a private role, you know, in a civilian role, my wife expects me to be the man in a relationship, and you know, there's certain things that she expects me to deal with. This has been
confused and blurred, hasn't it? Because I feel like society very much nowadays wants to label people. And I think the reality is that you can be a blend of many different things, and that's totally okay. So in some roles, and like I say, right, like my wife is into all sorts of sports and hobbies. She's in the gym. She's a very good mountain biker. She's rides motorbikes with me. But she can put a dress on a Saturday night if we go out for dinner or whatever. Like, what I'm getting at here is that it's okay to be many of those different things. And no one looks down their nose at her when she's in a dress or looks up to her necessarily when she's in a more formal role. They just look at her as Rach, who's good at these things and is part of the group. Do you know what I mean? So stop. We don't need the labels anymore. She's just a girl that's out motorbiking with us, and she's just a girl that's riding mountain bikes with us. Sometimes, quite often, quicker than the guys that we ride with, you know? So it's okay to be any of those things. We don't need to keep labeling this shit, you know?
I totally agree with you.
Anyway, I wanted to something I wanted to sound you out about, if you don't mind. I've got this little adventure coming up, and I wanted to see if you knew of anyone that had done it, or if there was any hints or tips. I don't know if that's worth.
Okay.
So I was sat the other night. I was laying in bed, couldn't sleep, and I was thinking, I really want to do. Honestly, this isn't. I'm not saying this to blow hot air up your ass. I watched the full Monty that you did, and I just thought I've never been into. Most of my riding has been off-road for the last sort of God knows how many years. I did a lot of like road touring in my early 20s, but majority of the last decade has been off-road riding. So with that in mind, the endurance type riding hasn't necessarily been part of it, because generally you do some lanes, or you go for a play day, or you do a few days away in the Welsh Hills or whatever. And so anyway, I watched your full Monty, and I was like, shit, yeah, that looks like, I want a bit of that. I wonder what I could do to, so 2 nights ago, I sat on OS Maps, and I basically plotted a route from, your listeners probably won't know, but I basically live on the southwest border of Wales. So I'm right down on the, southeast border. I live right on the southeast corner. And I was like, I wonder if I can make it to Holyhead in the southwest tip of Wales without touching an A road. So just B roads and off road. That's all I'm allowed to do. So 2 nights ago, I spent like 4 hours on OS Maps, like, putting dots across the. And anyway, basically, I have a route which only touches a minor A road twice for about a mile at a time, and I can ride from my door to Holyhead off road and B roads. So
on a push bike, on a pedal bike.
No, sorry, on the KTM, on the 790.
All right, okay, gotcha.
So in 3 weeks, a pal and I are going to leave here early, and we're going to try and do it in a oneer, non-stop to Holyhead from home.
Awesome.
So firstly, am I fucking nuts? Well, we know I am, because we're all fucking nuts. And secondly, do you know anyone who's done it so I can hit them up for some tips?
I don't know anyone that's done it, but anyone that's listening or watching, if you have or you know anybody, please get in touch.
Or if they want to come and do it with us, then come join. You know, like it's
there. You go.
Open invitation.
How long do you reckon it's going to take?
It's right. Okay, just to touch on this a little bit. The route that I have plotted, when you start going, I don't know how much you've used OS or any of your viewers use OS, but like you can basically the options are endless, right? Like there's certain snag points, especially going into the Isle of Anglesey, where you have to take a certain road, or for obvious reasons. And around Snowdonia National Park, there's only a number of options, but sort of mid to North Wales down, the options are endless, right? So the route I've plotted is by no means the best route. It's just the route that I've plotted, so could be really shit. But it was 404 kilometres, the route I've plotted. So I don't actually know how long it's going to take, but I plan on leaving here in darkness, because there's B roads until we get to the first bit of off-road. So I'm thinking I'm going to leave home at like 5:30 and then hit the first lane just as the sun's starting to tip its hat. And then my gut feeling is it will be riding into Holyhead in the midnight. It'll be dark.
Why not do it on the longest day? Sunrise to sunset.
Well, because I want it to be hard. And
Right.
I figured doing it before the clocks go
Fair
forward
enough.
just makes
enough.
it another element of daftness.
I get that.
So I'm just going to have a crack, and we're going to take a little lightweight tent or a bivvy, turn up hopefully at a campsite in Holyhead, go to bed, and then just ride A roads or all the way home. But
Awesome.
it's coming up, folks. To March the 16th, I'm doing it. If any of your listeners are really keen to, if they're relatively solid off-road riders, want to come and join, because some of it will be tough going, off-road. But yeah, hit me up. Give me some tips or come and join, because we're going to do it. So,
Hey, well, folks, head to either the YouTube channel or the Instagram account. There'll be links in the show notes or in the vid description at Bikes for Brains. Check that out.
And hey, Bruce, if any of them also just want to have a yarn about like my experiences with mental health and stuff, then that's also part of it. Like they can. I'm an open book on that. As
Gotcha.
I've opened the doors now, so I mean, there's nothing to hide anymore. It's
Happy days.
It's there for the taking.
I want to rewind a bit. What was this? What's this winter series that you're doing with Matt? Because I feel like I know Matt now that I've heard about his bum hole and his insides.
Yeah, sorry, Matt. I'm really sorry, man. It's run by a guy called Bert at Rally Moto.
Oh yeah,
and he basically runs he runs road book events. So I don't know if you've ever come across them, but they're like a Dakar style.
Yeah, they got quite popular in the last few years, haven't they?
Yeah. So basically what this event is that we're doing over winter, it's called the Icebreaker Challenge. And it's not, I think you have to pay a membership to Rally Moto. I can't remember exactly what it is, 40 quid a year or something. It's not expensive. And then the event, I think, was 140 quid for 6 different routes. And basically you get sent the routes on an app that you put on I've got mine on like an old Samsung Android screen, a tablet that I put on the bike. And then basically you get sent the route, or you download the route whenever you're going to do these routes. There's 6 routes. This year it was Cotswolds, Thetford Forest over in the east, Chilterns, North London, Salisbury Plain, which we did 2 weekends ago. And then this weekend, this will come out, I think, after we've done them, but we've got North Yorkshire Moors and the Peaks. And they basically are circa 100-mile routes, some of them 50% off-road, using green lanes and byways. And basically you have to navigate using your classic sort of like Dakar French words and symbols. And you get scored not on your speed, but on your accuracy to navigate via the waypoints.
Okay.
And it's basically a motivation to get out and ride your motorbike off-road in winter. And do you know what? Honestly, I say this gospel honest truth. I've done a lot of racing and riding in different veins over the years. I think it's one of the best series of events that I have been involved in. It is superb. Like, it's not beyond its little bugs. This guy is trying to run quite a complex system on an app. Like occasionally it has a few little quirks here and there, but as a concept of what he's offering, and as a way of going out with your pals without having to even consider the route that you're riding, and not having a racing pressure. It's just about completing the route in mostly inclement weather, and being accurate. Mate, honestly, I'd do it next year, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
So is everybody doing the same routes at the same time, or is it just something you just download the route and off you go and do it in your own time?
Yeah, sorry, no, that's a really good question, actually. You can start from the 1st of December, and if you don't have to complete all the routes, basically, if you do 3 routes, you get a T-shirt, and if you do 6 routes, you get if you do all 6, you get like a icebreaker hoodie. It's tongue in cheek. It's a bit of fun, but you have to complete them between the 1st of December and the 28th of February. So it's very much this is your window of opportunity, and you can do them whenever you want. Some lunatic last year did all 6 of them back to back. chucked his bike in a van, moved on to the next one. Yeah, I know. When I saw that we talk about the ego and the comparison. When I saw that, I was like, oh, I want to do that.
I bet you Salisbury Plain was fun. I did Salisbury Plain. I think it was March or April time in the pissing rain. Yeah, and it was just chalk, isn't it? It's just chalky mud there. You just slide all over the place. It's
so greasy. Yeah. In fact, I haven't edited it yet. That'll be out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. The Salisbury Plain route. But yeah, it was rain. Well, we started the day. It was frozen. All the lanes were frozen, which was terrifying. And then halfway through the day, it warmed up like 6 or 7 degrees, and it just turned pissing wet and slush and horrible. Yeah. So it was hard. But I tell you, the one that surprised me the most in terms of great off-road riding was Thetford Forest, really? Over in the east. Honestly, some of the lanes were like a motocross track that went on for 10k. It blew my brain. Yeah.
God, I didn't think you got that over
superb. Here. Yeah, it was unreal. I reckon out of the 116 miles, I think that route was, I reckon at least half of it, probably more, was entirely off-road. It was superb. It was absolutely superb. We finished the route just like, that was unreal. Like just, unreal.
And that's all on the Rally Moto site, is it? You can
head over to Rally Moto. I don't know if it's .com or .co.uk, but Rally Moto. He holds several events around the country. He's doing one next month called the Kilda 500, where you can go and do 500k over 2 miles using road books in Kilda Forest. He's got some really cool things going on, and I tell you, that Icebreaker Challenge has been, and like I say, we've got these 2 next routes, and because I live down south, we're travelling up tomorrow, staying overnight, doing North Yorkshire Moors on Saturday, then trucking south in the van, staying overnight, doing the peaks on Sunday. But they're superb, really, really good, and all legal, all on legal byways, legal lanes, and B roads.
Have you done any of these sort of challengey type rides on the push bike? I'm assuming you have. The main one I'm thinking of is, have you ever done the Strath Puffer? Because my brother's done that a couple of times.
No, I've had many friends that have done the Strath Puffer, and they still do it every year. They go up and do it. And I like to refer to things the Strath Puffer. You've heard of Type 1 and Type 2 fun before?
No,
okay, so type, for your listeners and for the benefit, Type 1 fun is you enjoy it whilst you're doing it. Type 2 fun is you finish it, and then about an hour later, when you've had a beer and you've put some food inside you, you're like, oh, that was good fun. Whereas,
let's do it again next year.
Yeah, right, let's do it again. Type 3 fun isn't actually a thing, but I've just coined it. Type 3 fun is it takes 2 fucking weeks or 3 months and after it to be like, I think that was fun. I think maybe I should do that again. That's a Strath Puffer.
Having kids is like that, I think, especially for women. I think women go through childbirth. That's a Type 3 fun for them.
Yeah, no, the answer is no, mate. My sort of area of mountain biking is what has been predominantly downhill or what's called enduro riding. So it's more focused on I raced a lot of cross country in my early 20s and mid 20s, which is kind of like Strath Puffer-esque type riding. But for the last 15 years, it's been more like how fast and how gnarly can the downhill be and how quick can I race down it. So if you've never seen it before, you should, when we get off this, Google the Mega Avalanche. Some of your viewers listeners may have seen it, but that sort of thing where it's like mass start, French techno music on the top of a mountain, and you're all trying to race to the bottom as quick as possible. I've done a fair bit of that, and stage racing, downhill stage races. So like, think of it a bit like a rally where you have say 6 stages and you have a transition between the stages, but the transitions aren't you have a start time for the stage, but you're not racing between the stages. But the stages are timed. So a bit like your classic enduro time card enduro test on a motorbike, where the transitions aren't timed, but then you have a timed section where you have to do that as quick as possible. That's
a bit like the Dakar then. Like the Dakar
very
rally.
Similar to the Dakar, yeah. That's been my mountain biking, but the stages are almost 100% downhill. So you
Right.
pedal up and then you race down, and then you pedal up and then you race down. That's been predominantly my mountain biking world for the last 15 years.
Have you ever done that insanity? I've seen these videos, and I'm sure they're just in the continent, they're over in Europe, where people are doing that sort of downhill mountain biking, but through towns. So they're just
urban DH.
Oh my good God. I mean, obviously never in a million years would I do it, but you look at it and just go, what a buzz that must be to do.
One of my best pals, actually, from when I was younger, is a pro mountain biker, and that's his speciality. That's what he does. He goes to South America and races through the streets and gaps off 60-foot roof gaps to trucks that they've built landings on, and like just I mean, I've ridden bikes for the best part of 25 years, and like I like jumping and stuff, but not when the ground's made of concrete, man. Like that, it's like you have to literally take your brain out, leave it at the top of the hill, and
I'm assuming they don't have that here in the UK. That's why you have to go abroad.
They have much more of it abroad. They do some things actually randomly, like in Sheffield, I think, and randomly down in Falmouth in Cornwall they do one. But it's not. Yeah, I know. I don't know why, but nothing on the scale that you'd have seen in like Colombia or Venezuela or some of the stuff they do in South America or in the Alps. We just don't have the elevation, right? And towns aren't built, and we tend to build towns and cities by rivers rather than on top of the hills, don't we? So.
Gotcha. Right, dude, we've been chatting for an hour. How do you fancy tackling a couple of questions? We've got some questions over on Patreon.
Hit me up. That'd be great.
Lovely job. Right, we'll go across to the clan over on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, David McCracken. How you doing, David? He's got quite a few questions here. He says, evening each, a pleasure to get to ask you some questions. Firstly, between the engine bikes and downhill mountain biking, which do you think takes more skill, or which do you think is more dangerous?
That's a fantastic question, isn't it? Because, well, let's tackle the first bit of that. What takes more skill? Okay, let's compare mountain biking with off-road motorcycling, because they're probably more directly comparable. If you were to compare off-road downhill mountain biking with, say, road motorcycling, I think that's probably an unfair comparison. But I would say the thing with downhill mountain biking that people don't realize is that you don't have an engine to get you out of trouble. So one of my good pals, who's very, very good on an enduro motorbike, to give you some context, last year I think he was in the top 5 at the Welsh 2-day. Not in the pro category, but in like the expert category. So he's a very good off-road motorcyclist. And he said to me, I won't even attempt to insult some of my Welsh pals with a Welsh accent.
Go on. This can be funny.
No, it's terrible. I'm really bad. It always sounds, nothing against it, but it always sounds Indian whenever I try doing a Welsh accent. I have no idea why, but that's just how it comes out.
I've got to hear it now.
I can just about say things like, all right, but how's it going? And he always says things like, when it's raining, he's like, it's bloody bogging. Anyway.
See those 2 houses, mine's the one in the middle.
He always says, you need to make friends with the throttle. And I think that's the thing with off-road motorcycling, is that I'm not taking anything away from it. It's hard, right? And I'm an average off-road motorcyclist. I'm a much better downhill mountain biker, but I'm still nowhere near a pro on a downhill mountain bike at all. I'm an entry lower end of clubman on an enduro bike off road, on a motorbike off road. So what I would say is, mountain biking requires you to be able to move your weight around on the bike far more, because you are the heaviest contributing factor to that unit weight. Whereas like on a motorbike, obviously the motorbike is the heaviest part of that package. So when stuff starts to go wrong on a motorbike, if you're good, which better than I am, you use the throttle to get the bike straight. They say if you start a tank slapper on a motorbike, you really should throttle through it to straighten the bike up. So when you're good and you have that space of mind, you can save many things by using the power of a motorbike. Whereas on a mountain bike, I think your precision and line choice is so much more important. So with no disrespect to any of those disciplines, I would personally say downhill mountain biking, if you take the top levels of both of those things, not my level, let's say, I would say downhill mountain biking requires more skill, personally. What's more dangerous? I don't think there's much in it there. Like, if you're a top end downhill mountain biker, you're ripping past trees in pajamas and a helmet, with a set of knee pads on, if you're lucky, at 60, 70 kilometers an hour.
Jesus.
But equally, if you watch like Joseph Garcia, for instance, in the World Moto Enduro series, you watch some of those top guys and girls riding, like the risk is huge. So I can't draw the line there for you, I'm afraid, David. They're both gnarly. They're both gnarly.
What about what you get from them, from the two different disciplines? Do you get different things from them, or is it I'm sure there's a crossover point, really, what you get mentally from riding a push
that's
bike
a very good point,
motorbike.
actually. There is very much a crossover, because I guess the emotional feeling at the end is the same, right? Like, for me, I think previously, if I'm totally honest with you, and maybe some listeners, viewers can relate, I think I've used these hobbies as not necessarily in a healthy manner, like minorly obsessed with them, because it's the only time where I felt alive and free.
Yeah.
So I don't like to think that you can only have unhealthy obsessions with bad things. You can also have unhealthy obsessions with good things, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, what I've got from them in the past is complete and utter escapism and freedom from the chimp that is questioning everything, and imposter syndrome, and putting you down, and So, but what I do get, which is shared, is okay. I'll make this a bit more succinct. I've forged some fantastic lifelong relationships from both of those things. And it's forced me to travel and meet people and take part in events and talk openly to new people in my life that, maybe I could get from something else, but for me, it comes from bikes. Mm-hmm. The thing that is very different for me between them is, cycling, as I say, hasn't necessarily been as much about the adventure and exploration for the last 10, 15 years. It's been about pretty much adrenaline, and I like the technicality of trying to smoothen out a rough trail. I like to try and pick lines to find the smooth points. Yeah. So I like the technicality of piecing together a track, whereas motorcycling for me has been more about strapping my bag on my back, riding out from the door, and the feeling of freedom and being escapism. But do you not think also there's an element of vulnerability about being on a motorcycle that you don't feel when you're in a car? Because you are exposed to the elements, you feel far more engaged with your natural surroundings when you're on a motorbike rather than traveling by other means, I find, personally.
Do you know, I've never considered or thought about it as being a vulnerability, but now you mention it, it probably is. Probably adds to the thrill, to the excitement, doesn't it?
Totally. Especially when you complete a journey, right? Because, like, if you get in your nice car and you drive 400 kilometers across Wales on B roads, the weather can realistically do what it wants, right? But when you've had to do that, choose the right clothing, stop in the right places for food, navigate the terrain. I think that my experience, when you stop to talk to people say you pull over to a cafe on the side of the road when you're traveling by bike, right? And you flip your helmet up, or you take the helmet off and you walk in, people just seem more interested in having a conversation with you as a traveler than they do if you just walked in with your car keys in your hand.
Yeah.
So, and I think that comes from a a non-verbal appreciation for the vulnerabilities that you are putting yourself out to. That's really shit vocabulary, but I
know
think
what you mean, though.
Yeah, I just think it's a non-verbal body language thing where people just have an appreciation for traveling in a way that isn't as easy, if that makes sense.
I was going to ask, do you get, now obviously being a cyclist and being a motorcyclist, you experience both sides of this, but you brought it up there. That reaction you get from people where people just seem to come up to you and they engage with you when you ride a motorbike. You stop somewhere and folk come up and they either ride bikes themselves or they know somebody, they've got family that did it, or it's something they've always wanted to do. So you're almost like this, dare I say it, the fantasy figure, where they can, I've always dreamed of doing something like that, and you're doing it.
Yeah.
Do you get the same thing on a pedal bike? Is that still that? Do you have that effect on people?
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't done any of the sort of long distance travel by bike for a long time. So if I'm totally honest, the type of bike riding, mountain biking I do, at least at times locally, there's a bit of a loggerheads between trail users and mountain bikers. So that's another story. But my wife does a lot of coming back to the tough female side of things. Like, she's done some really epic self-supported bike trips by herself, and she has said that people are far more sort of like just open because they appreciate that what you're doing is vulnerable and difficult.
Where's she been then? What's she done?
She's just done a few things. Like a few years ago, she cycled from Inverness to Glasgow on the Badger Divide, and then it's an off-road route that takes you from Inverness to Glasgow all the way down through the Highlands, basically. She also did another one called the Pennine Rally, which with a friend of hers. So she cycled from Edinburgh to Manchester off-road, self-supported with tents. And then the same year, she did a thing called the Torino-Nice, which is touring in Italy to Nice on the French Riviera, which was 1,000 kilometers and 17,000 meters of vert in 7 days, carrying all of her own kit.
Oh my God!
Yeah, she's tough. And to give your listeners some context, right?
Proper nails.
She is, as I told you, she's an ex-copper. She's 55 kilos and 5'3". So she's not like
less than half my weight.
So she's a tiny little thing, but she just gets out there, mate. Like, without getting too deep in it, like, there's two things I think that have genuinely saved me in my life, and first and foremost, it's been bikes, and the other part is 100%, no question, is Rach. No question, absolutely none. So yeah, I'm eternally grateful to her for being the little pocket rocket that she is. She's wicked. I hope you meet her someday, man. She's fucking awesome. Man. She really is.
Love to.
Anyway,
what police force was she in?
She was in Dorset Police, actually. We both. I was born in London, but I lived in Dorset for most of my childhood into my 20s. And Rach was born in Dorset and lived there until we both moved away. But we never knew each other. We lived, actually, ironically, for most of our childhood only 4 miles apart, but we never met each other. Some of our friends moved in the same circles, but we just never met. And in that time, I went traveling and she went away to uni, and then we both moved back, and then we met at a later date, which is funny, really. But she joined Dorset Police. She was in Dorset Police for, I think, she finished university and then went into the dispatch call centre in Dorset in Winthrop, and then from there she went into the police as a beat bobby, and she was a police officer for, I think, 5 years, something like that. And we touched on this the other day when we chatted, but I think the thing that changed for her was this is controversial because this arcs back to our little aside earlier about women and men being tough and all this sort of stuff. And the thing that changed for her was that a new oh, excuse me, what's the people called that are come in the top that change every chief inspectors? Are they called?
Chief Constable for districts, counties.
Yeah, so a new one of those came into the force and changed the working schedule and changed the crewing schedule. So like it was always at night between the hours, I think, of midnight and 5 a.m. They were always double crewed when they attended jobs. And they changed it to single crews at night.
Yeah, did the same in the Met.
Okay, so and Rach had also had her blue light training. So what suddenly happened was this 55 kilo, 5'3" female, and I've hopefully just convinced your viewers and listeners how tough this girl is. So she's no weakling, right?
Shrinking violet, yeah.
Yeah, but she was now visiting houses where there was a report of some guy had smashed his wife with a hammer because he was drunk, and she's knocking at the door at 2 a.m. by herself, and she just thought, nah, like I don't get paid enough for this, like this is ridiculous. Like it doesn't matter how tough you are. If you are 55 kilos and 5'3", and the person on the other side of the door has got a hammer, he's 6'4" and weighs 100 kilos, and he's angry. I don't care who you are. It's just physics. You do not stand a chance,
100%. And it's also down to safety. It's down to safety of the officers that are involved, obviously, but also it's down to the safety of the person that you're being sent to deal with, because they might not be a bad person. Generally, they're not bad people. Generally, they are having some sort of psychological issue, or they're pissed, or they're off their tits on something. Generally, they're not just bad people. Generally, there's something that's sent them down that way. And if it's one-on-one, right, and they're a lot bigger and stronger than you are, you have to use a lot more, not lethal, but you have to use much more aggression and
you might have to use violence. Unreasonable force, mightn't you? At some
you have
point
to use violence at times to deal with these people, because you have to subdue them. Because if they overpower you, they have access to your taser, your ASP. God forbid you're carrying a gun, your gun. Yeah. They've got access to all your equipment, your radio. If they overpower you and knock you out, then what are they going to do? They might, you might be there to try and save somebody who's being attacked by that person. If they wipe you out, then who's going to save the other person that's involved? So if there's two of you, then you still have to be very assertive with how you deal with people, but you can use controlled aggression, and generally you inflict far less injury on that person that you're dealing with if there's 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. I mean, that's just how it works.
And do you know what she said? That like the point is that like if you turn up to a situation like that and she's crewed with a guy that it doesn't have to be a big guy, but like I'm shorter than average height, but like if you're a 5'11" guy with an average stature, there's going to be more of a consideration of how that situation is dealt with by the other person.
Absolutely.
This isn't about boys or girls. It's just physics. It's just nature, And so anyway, basically that was kind of the turning point for her. She just thought, I don't like the way this is going. And, some other little quirks were changing. And it came about at a time where, if we're totally honest, I was working hours during the day. She was working shifts at night. It was a reasonably young relationship between two of us, like within the first 4 or 5 years. And we just thought it genuinely came down to like, do we want each other more than we want these jobs? Because we just didn't see each other. It was just passing ships in the night all the time, So again, very grateful. We came at a time where we were going to go and do a bit of traveling, and she took a sabbatical from the police force, a 5-year sabbatical actually. And we went off traveling or whatever. And then long story short, we came back and Rach had broken herself again, riding mountain bikes, and was off work for a period of time. And they said to her, we're going to put you on some sort of report because you keep hurting yourself. And she started doing a bit of free writing for a magazine. And one thing led to another, and she got a job working for a magazine. So she just said, I'm done, police, thanks. I'm going to... And that's kind of what she pursued for a while. So...
Mate, the amount of time I said this so many times, like outside of this podcast, but so many times on this podcast, talking with people and hearing stories like this, isn't it insane the way life works out at times? Sometimes it can feel like life is giving you one kick in the bollocks after another, can't it? It just keeps hammering you in the ground.
Yeah, it does.
But sometimes it's just like, how have the stars aligned here? How has this happened? It's like it just gives you every opportunity going. It's like, have that. Come on, put a smile on your face.
I think you're right, man. And I do think that we only see those good things aligning sometimes in retrospect, I think sometimes at the time, an opportunity doesn't necessarily show itself as an opportunity, and it's only in retrespect where you look back and you think, fuck, that was really fortunate, Like look at this situation now, right? Like I've had, we all struggle with some tough times. I've had some particularly tough times over the years, and that has led to a level of self-awareness and understanding that I could never have hoped for before the whole journey of hardship. And here I am talking to you as if we've known each other for years, and to your viewers. And so there's just some wonderful things that come from some tough shit, and that is part of motorcycling, and in general for me, is that you could say this when you went to do your full Monty, right? Like, you have a level of belief in yourself that you're going to complete it based on the experience that you have previously, right? There's a level of, I have tried or achieved certain things before, so therefore there is a level of belief that I probably will succeed, hopefully. But like this stupid diagonal Wales thing, I have no idea whether I'll actually get there in a day or not, And I think the real beauty of something that we're missing nowadays is that there's such a fear of failure nowadays that, and it starts in school, I think, there's this thing that we're taught that everyone should have an equal right to everything. It's like, well, yeah, except that's not actually the way life works.
It's not life. Yeah, it's just not. Life isn't fair. Life is not fair.
No. So I think the more... you have to choose your hard in life. And that's something that I took from Stoic philosophy, is that, like, if you choose some hardship, when the hard stuff knocks at your door, which it will, it just does, you have some tools in the toolbox to deal with it. And for me, my chosen mode of learning those life skills is planning silly adventures on motorbikes and riding mountain bikes down a hill, But you can fill in the gap there. It's whatever anyone chooses, isn't it,
Yeah, there's a couple of points there that came to the fore when you were talking. One is that fear of failure, in that I personally can have a fear of failure, but I overcome that. And I have to. I remember being in the Old Bill, and I'm a big fat lump. I'm 6'3", nearly 21 stone. And then in the firearms division, we used to have a yearly, now they have yearly fitness tests anyway throughout the Old Bill. But it was a little bit higher in the firearms division. Nothing drastic.
Sure.
But my fat ass used to stress about it every single year, the beep test. It was only the beep test I used to worry about. And it was only like 8.4, whatever it was. It was nothing. But I used to really stress myself up about it. And I don't get stressed about anything, but that used to stress me out. And I would dip it a couple of times. I can remember dipping it. And the beat test is all psychological. If you don't have a good level of fitness, anyone can pass it, but it's psychological. You just have to keep going. But I beat myself a couple of times, and I'd end up having to speak to a mate that's fairly decent, fairly handy fit. And I would say, right, can you run it with me and just don't let me stop? And I'd have them running alongside me going, come on, you fat fuck, come on, go. And you do it. Yeah. You can get through it. But a lot of other things, like these endurance rides that I do, I just have in my head and I go, well, okay, if I don't, like that one, the full Monty, if I don't do it in 48 hours, who gives a shit? I don't care. Am I a failure? No, I'm doing it for shits and giggles.
It's removing the self-imposed pressure, isn't it? Yeah. And just being okay with saying, well, it didn't work out this time, Like, a good example of this is, like, if you hadn't done so many of the things that you've done over the last 10 years, 12 years that you've been on this YouTube specifically, but like motorcycling, you wouldn't have the arsenal in the toolbox to kind of say to yourself, I'll probably do this. But the bottom line is I failed at shitloads of things that I've tried before and everything was okay. So if I fail at this, fail at this self-imposed challenge, it doesn't really matter. Learn from it, you know? I think, you know, someone said to me the other day, a really sort of a guy that articulates a message far better than I. Maybe he'll be on the channel at some point. Moss, actually, I'm interviewing him. I'd like to ask you about a little series I'm going to do in a minute. But anyway,
yeah, please do.
He might be on the channel in the next few weeks. But he says to me a lot. The cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. And I think that's the point that we're just not teaching kids nowadays, is that you've got to just feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Like, look, let's be honest, right? When you embarked on your around the world journey by yourself on a fairly inappropriate motorcycle at the time, in my opinion, there must have been fears and doubts in your mind, right? Like, you didn't know what led around the corner.
And I failed in the first attempt. You know, I left, and 7 weeks later, I was back in the UK after letting Africa beat me. But I got the option to go again, and that failure taught me what I did wrong. What I did wrong, predominantly mentally. I let Africa beat me mentally, and
interesting. Okay,
what's the word I'm looking for? It embedded a resolve in me mentally that I would never give up again. I would never, ever give up. It's just like, okay, whatever comes our way, you just deal with it. And my path, I've said this ad nauseum on this podcast, your path might be to go from A to B to C to D to E to F in whatever it is that you're doing. But life ain't fair. Life's not like that. And occasionally life just goes, hiya, this way is blocked. What are you going to do now? So you have to learn, okay, I might have to go to L and then back to B and then back to Q and then forward to E. That's just life, isn't it? But the key to success, and whatever it is that you want to do, whatever level you want to ascertain, whatever you want to achieve in life, the key to success is never giving up. Because if you give up, you will never reach whatever it is. Well, whatever destination
you miss 100% of the shots at goal you don't take.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's funny with a load of these sort of. I really love a load of these statements and facts, and they're so fucking cliche, aren't they? But they're cliche because they're true. And you know, it really is a case of having a go. Someone messaged me last week after this little video I did that said, oh yeah, I get asked out to go riding with his group of pals all the time, but they're all better riders than he is. And I always just like, I want to go so bad, but it's like my self-preservation or ego or fear of fucking up in front of them, pardon my French, is it won't let him go and do it. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, if you live your life feeling like you're never going to get something wrong in front of someone, like, you're just missing out on some of life's rich tapestries, aren't you? You know,
absolutely.
You
have to go for it. You have to take the shot, don't you? You have to take the shot. But again, we're being quite generic here, because there are people out there who aren't like that. There are people out there who are perfectly happy just to float along. Fine. If that's your thing, that's your thing.
Well, but sometimes I'm envious of them, Bruce, because I'm like, well, if you're happy being like that, then it's a fairly simple way to find happiness, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. There are people that are just they're content just to go along at whatever it is that they're doing. No qualms with that whatsoever.
Oh, no, there's no judgment.
If that's your thing,
part.
that's your thing. But if you're feeling like you're not reaching your capabilities, or you're not content in your lot in life, you want more, then I think then you need to realize that there's not going to be any magic answer. No one's just going to come out the clouds and go, there you go, there's what you're looking for. You got to go out and look for it, and you got to figure out how to get it.
You definitely have, totally. And a topic I'm going to talk about in coming videos is about victimhood. You know, how people, and myself included, I can talk about this openly because it has been me. People with mental health struggles quite often define themselves by their issues, and because of this whole labeling thing. Well, I'm bipolar, I've got depression, I've got anxiety syndrome, I've got ADHD. Like fill in the blank, right? And I think the concern with that on my part is that when you start to define yourself by those disabilities, you can become a victim of your own making. And I think I was in a place a few years back, maybe 2 years into this real acknowledged journey with mental health, that was becoming me. I was telling everyone almost in the first few sentences, oh, well, yeah, well, that happened because of this anxiety disorder, or, oh, that happened because when I'm depressed, my health struggles or my guts play up. So I can't do that because I have bad guts that week. I just suddenly realized maybe 5 years ago, I was like, no, like this isn't me. It wasn't me before. And I'm not going to define my life by the things that I struggle with. And once I acknowledged that hard sort of truth, oh man, I was just suddenly, the doors opened psychologically, because I was just like, I've seen many therapists over the last 10 years, but my favorite therapist, I say my favorite because it's such a relationship in therapy that some of them you can't fucking stand, and then other ones you just gel with, and so my favorite therapist, she just used to say to me that, like, when you just acknowledge that your vulnerability is actually your superpower, all of a sudden, people just are more happy to engage in the truth with you, and you can just start doing things without any fear of these sort of underlying issues that you have, And I think you can apply that to anything. Even when we were generalizing a minute ago, obviously we naturally come to bike adventures because that's what we're into. But some people that aren't seeking out adventure on a motorcycle or in any other mode of transport, they still have struggles. And sometimes it might even be like, am I a good parent? Like, can I go to parents' evening? And I'm not saying that to belittle that, like that's still important. But I'm just saying
it's not as important as bikes, though, Adam. It's not as important as bikes, obviously.
Okay, I mean, we're biased, but my point is that we all have fears that keep us awake at night, and whether that be traveling around the world on motorbike, or whether it be going to the shops by yourself. So I just think that, like, not defining yourself by those sort of slight disabilities and feeling the fear and just getting out there is a great way of just breaking down your own barriers, self-imposed barriers.
Isn't the mind fascinating? Like the mind can make us achieve perceived subhuman achievements, can't it? It can make you it can make you perform insane things that, like,
unbelievable,
physics and physiology will say that's not possible, but you can do it. People have done it. But it can also cripple people. Absolutely cripple.
Yeah. I mean, it can be the most wonderfully inspiring thing, and equally the most terrifying thing as well. When you don't understand fundamentally what it's trying to do. And I think for me, I'm not saying I've got it dialed, but I realise that actually what your ego and your mind is trying to do is keep you alive first and foremost. I'll sum it up, actually. The guy that I just alluded to, Moss, he said, we're actually, our bodies are living in this modern world, but our brains are still in the cave. And I think...
So you totally broke there again,
sorry,
Adam,
man.
Just in case it hasn't caught that. What was that Moss said?
Moss said to me, he has a lot of cave analogies. I should probably worry about him maybe. But he said to me, your physical body is in the contemporary modern society, but your brains are still in the cave. And I guess what he means by that is that, like, physiologically our world has changed, but mentally we're still those cavemen and women that we're quite basic, in terms of how your brain is trying to keep you alive. So I think when you add in so much stimulus, which is ironic as we're here talking about entertaining people, but when you when you add in all these myriad of stimulus in an arena where your brain probably isn't meant to take that, all that information, I think the modern world can just become pretty terrifying, which is maybe why we enjoy doing things like bikes, because it's a simplifying of life, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. And it's an escape. We touched on that earlier, isn't it? You can, if you're going, I know for me, if I'm dealing with something, going out on the bike just allows me to switch that part of my brain off, because I'm focusing on staying alive on the bike.
Yeah,
So, being out, and if I'm out with mates, then, you know, because I've switched off from focusing on whatever it was that I'm dealing with at that time, it allows me just to chat with my mates. And then, again, I'm the type of person that if something's on my mind, now I'm the type, I never used to be. I used to shut everything away. Now I'll chat to my mates about it, you know, and I find that time and time again, especially now I do tours on the motorbike. I can have complete and utter strangers turning up. I have a big repeat customer base, but I also have newbies that turn up. And whether I've known somebody for years or whether I've just met them and we've been riding for a day or two on a tour, you always find that once you're off the bike, either having a brew at lunchtime or in the evenings you're having a beer or whatever it is, people just do start to open up. I definitely have noticed that, and it's part of the reason actually why it's not just exclusively blokes that come away on our tours, but I tend not to do pillions. You know, I tend not to have people bring their other halves, just because it's, unless I know them. If I know the people personally, then, you know, that's different. If they're a good fit for the dynamic of the group, because it's become, I'm very conscious that for me, motorbiking and touring, I hate to use this expression, but it does become that little safe space for the blokes. You know, they open up about stuff. They start talking about things, and there's no way they would talk about this if maybe the dynamic of the group was a bit different.
Yeah, and I think it is, actually another fundamental motivation for this really was that I think when you are in an environment where you have a shared passion for something and you have a connection already, it's far easier to be your authentic self and to discuss the things that keep you awake at night. Because you're just dropping your guard down, aren't you? And being like, I can relate to this person. They understand. They move in the same world as I do, and we enjoy the same things together. And you know what, man, like, here's me talking about that specific modality, if you like, of loosening up and being free and open with people, as if it's something that I've just discovered. But actually, that's just real fucking life that we've been doing. We for millions of years, we've just forgotten how to do it, you know? So I just think going and doing things with people that you have a shared appreciation with is just the most fundamentally wonderful experience. You know, I just live for it, mate. I really do. It's just awesome.
Can I ask a private question here? And if you're not comfortable asking it, feel free. You don't need to. I'm interested. At what stage did you think I need some help? I need to speak to somebody about what I'm going through.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, actually, because I have no issue talking about it at all. I just sometimes you just don't think people want to hear it, you know.
There will be people going through things at the moment who will benefit from whatever it is you said.
First and foremost, what I will say before I get on to answering your question, what I would say before anything else is go and get some help. I don't care who you are or how scared of opening up or how ingrained in you to not discuss these things with other people it has been in your life. Go and seek some help, because it changed my life immeasurably. It genuinely was the key in a lock, or sorry, the first paving stones in a pathway, I should probably describe it as, like.
Okay.
And look, don't get me wrong, it wasn't, as I say, I've seen lots of therapists. A few of them, it's not that they were bad therapists. You just have to find someone that you you gel with, you know,
you fit with, yeah.
that you fit with. So what I would say is that I initially, what am I now, 40? When I was 31, I first went and saw a therapist. And it came about, if I'm totally honest with you, the anxiety was so bad at that period of time that I couldn't really work. And it was crippling me physically because I was crying uncontrollably for days on end. And, you know, I just terrified. Like you imagine running away from a saber-tooth tiger. It's that fight or flight response, you know, and my wife didn't know what to do. She was doing her best, you know, and I just thought, quite honestly, and you know, I don't say this lightly, like I'm going to do something that's irreversible if I don't go and get some help with this, you know? So I went down the NHS line initially, and again, not taking anything away from NHS psychiatrists, psychologists. The NHS is a bit of a broken system, sadly, and the people I came across initially weren't, they were just busy and weren't really interested. So I ended up doing it privately, and, you know, it was more expensive, but that started me on a journey from the age of 31 to probably, I haven't actively seen a therapist for the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. But in that period of time between the age of 31 and say 37, I saw a therapist at least once a month for 9 to 10 months of the year. And various different ones. Some of them I was with for 2 years. One of the longest stint was with a therapist for 2 years. And do you know what's quite funny is a good therapist is really happy when you've come to the end of your journey with that person to say, you can't spend any more money with me anymore, Adam. We've come to the end of the road together. You need to go off and consolidate some of the stuff that we've learned together, which I did, but you can't come back to me. You need to, you know. So yeah, I've done a lot of that over the last sort of 7 or 8 years, and I just think that probably don't wait as long as I did. You know, I almost think that therapy should be a proactive action rather than a reactive action in many extents. You know, like we're all dealing with our own life shit, and some people with childhood traumas that you're not even necessarily aware that it causes you grief. So even seeing someone proactively, I think, is good for you. You know, personal opinion, of course, but.
Can I like what does therapy do for you then? Does it give you?
That's a great question.
Does it arm you with ways of dealing with whatever it is that you're dealing with, or is it a generic thing? Or
yeah, I mean, I think some therapy can be more generic. I think the thing that I took away personally that I needed to hear was an ability to reframe my own thoughts. So. You know, we all have intrusive thoughts. That's just nature of the beast when your head's whirring. It's one of the reasons why we love going and doing things like hobbies, right? Because it's an ability to take you away from that whirring of the brain all the time.
Yeah. Focus on something else.
Right? And I think for me, the thing I took away from therapy mainly was you're perfectly normal and you're okay was the first and foremost thing. And secondly, the ability to reframe thoughts that come into your mind from predominantly negative to more, not necessarily sickly positive, but just in a way that actually makes you realize that this is a perfectly normal procedure. It's just that the favorite therapist that I alluded to earlier, one of the best things she said to me is that there's nothing wrong with you, Adam. You've just got really good at being anxious. And I just thought, yeah, like, you've heard of this thing that the thing that you do more, that there's this principle called the SAID principle, which is specific adaptations to imposed demands, which basically just means in layman terms, the more you do something, the better you get at it. Right. And basically I just got really good at being anxious because I just was practicing it every day, you know.
Becomes that neural pathway, doesn't it? It's just, that's exactly the way your brain, that's the route your brain takes to deal with stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just had to, I say just as if it's easy. I the answer is easy, but it's not simple. Sorry, the other way around. The answer is simple, but it's not easy to do.
Not easy, yeah.
But actually, I just needed to start the things that I was scared of. I just needed to just force myself to do it anyway. It was like exposure therapy, you know. And the more that I did that, the more I just realized that like a bit of neurodivergence is fucking awesome. It's awesome, you know. Like the weirdest of people that I've met. I say that loosely because I'm weird. They are some of the most fantastic. Unique, yeah. But I mean, that's cool, right? Like we're all a bit weird.
We all are. Yeah,
what's that saying from if you've got any Yorkshire people listening, like is now as queer as folk? I think that's a Yorkshire term.
Yeah.
So yeah, therapy for me was just a way of speaking to someone that wasn't emotionally connected to me. And I tell you the biggest thing, man, actually, now I think about it, you know, if with your friends or whatever, if you are getting irate about something that, say it's an emotion, their immediate reaction, the same way you would with your friends, is to be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, that's really bad. Like, yeah, that's really shit. Like, I'd feel the same. Come here, let me give you a hug. You know, like they want to make you feel better, right? What a therapist does when you're getting all emotional and you're telling your story and you're falling into your little ditch of victimhood, they just go, yeah, right, okay. And so what I'm getting at is that once you've told that story, there's no fuel for that emotion anymore, because you're like, oh, they're not buying this. Yeah. They're not buying this story. They're just actually picking out the bits that matter. So then at the end of it, they don't even focus on the real, like, the real nitty gritty. They just focus on the physiological wiring of those thoughts. And they just go, well, actually, what you should take away from this, Adam, is this, this, and this. And this is why this happens. So when this happens, why don't you try doing this? And all of a sudden it was like, I don't need to keep telling this story to myself, because actually it doesn't matter to anyone other than, does that make sense? I'm waffling.
No.
But,
No, I get that. It's like they're taking away the...
They're taking the petrol away from the fire, basically.
Yeah, it's the emotion that you're feeling, and the experience that you're feeling, and you're connecting with all. You're connecting your feelings and emotions together, and how it's making you feel. They're just coming out from an outside point of view, aren't they? And just listening, and probably taking a much more overall viewpoint of things, balanced viewpoint of things. Yeah. But again, I suppose it's going to be different for everybody, isn't it? There's going to be 100%. People that are going to need 100%. That reassuring shoulder to just be there.
Sure. And there is an element of that, mate. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the reassurance that I took away from a lot of therapy was that, like I said to you earlier, that I was okay, that there was nothing wrong. That was something I needed to hear, you know? I personally didn't need someone to buy into my victimhood and my story too much, but I did need someone to say, like, yeah, this is perfectly normal, lad. Like, you're going to be okay, mate. You know, that gave me the strength to be like, oh, okay, I just need to work through this, you know? But I think for me, a big part of something that's really important with mental health, and I don't know if you've noticed this, there is definitely more prevalence of mental health problems nowadays than I recall there having. And I think maybe there's twofold answers to that. One is that years ago, it was much more of a taboo subject. People didn't talk about it. So maybe people suffered in silence. But the other way I think of looking at it is that we have pressures on our lives now that didn't exist 50 years ago, you know, social media and not knowing our place in society, and a lot of the things we alluded to earlier, that let's not get into the politics of it again, but, you know, it's harder to find your place nowadays, and we have a lot of external pressure to perform and live in a certain way to fit into the machine. So I think with that, sometimes we end up in jobs that don't fulfill us, and we end up in relationships that don't fulfill us because of necessity. And I think there's more of that than there ever has been, and we've lost purpose. And I think having some purpose, whether that be riding your motorcycle, or for me, whether it's starting a YouTube channel to talk about my funky brain, or whether it's baking cakes, or you just have to find something that is soul food for you, that is balm for your soul, you know? And that is, I think, probably one of the biggest, if you wanted to make a change in your life for your mental health, that's one of the fundamentally biggest changes I could say has made a difference to my life.
Yeah, I think these issues have always been there, but it's just that it's so instantaneous now, and it's magnified to a global scale. In that, say even 100 years ago. Let's just go back 100 years ago, 1920s odds. I imagine people were still going through issues back then. They're going through personal identification issues. Their sexuality, their mental state.
Well, their sexuality they couldn't even talk about back then, right? I mean, that wasn't a good thing.
But then the world you were exposed to was much narrower. It's much smaller. It was your 100%. Local community, or perhaps if it was by a newspaper, if someone outed you and put you in the newspaper, that takes time, and then people have to buy it. It's got to be printed, and people have to read it. Blah blah blah. Fast forward 100 years to where we're at now, and literally, you do something, someone's filming it, bang, it's on social media, and the entire planet has access to it.
Yeah,
that's a whole different scale, and I just think psychologically, we're not there yet to be able to deal with this. So it does feel like, oh my fucking God, what's going on? I mean, I'll tell you right now, you'll get this as your social platforms grow. You will get negativity. You'll get trolls. You'll get that sort of stuff. And I'm a grown man. I'm 48 years of age. I'm 6'3". I'm 20 odd stone, and it's a little bit like getting bullied in the playground sometimes. Sometimes you look at it and you're just like, I'm going to fucking rip their head off. But there's another part of it where your bottom lip goes and you're just like, you got me there,
Totally. Well, I think that's natural, man. And I two things with that, actually. I first and foremost, it's impossible to avoid negativity hurting you in some way, right? Like that's just, it's ingrained. And if you didn't feel it, then you'd be a sociopath, right? So the fact that you do feel it and it hurts is totally normal. And you know what? I want it to hurt. It's meant to. And my retort to the trolls, right, is that what comes with this instantaneous sort of the ability to, like you just said it, like you can instantaneously tell someone that you dislike them, right? That for every person that says they don't like what you're doing, there's tenfold that do like what you're doing. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to deal with it perfectly forever, but I listened to a podcast actually just yesterday driving to the office, and this guy that I follow, a guy called Alex Hormozy, he's a business guru. He was basically saying that it doesn't matter whether you try something or don't try something, you will have haters. That's just life. So you may as well try something and be hated than not try and still be hated, so, hey, for the stuff you put out, man, there's so many people that think it's fucking awesome versus a few people that have got nothing better to do. So, write your comments, jog on. I'm going to keep doing it anyway.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. You cannot take this stuff personally because,
but it's hard. I agree.
Different I think there's a whole world of a difference between a comment from someone that you've never met before, who doesn't know you, username 1 2 3 4 5 6, and a comment from someone that does know you. And obviously a comment from someone that you do know, again, it's the written word, and you can take that in umpteen different ways. But when you know someone, you confront them out, you can contact them and go, I kind of took this from what you said. You know what I mean? But it's difficult. Sometimes if it's from someone you don't know, you can end up in this tit for tat battle, which is just the worst thing to do. But I've done it, and
so have I, man. So have I, so
it's human nature, isn't it?
It is. Anyway. You get drawn in, don't you?
Absolutely. Right, let's get back onto these questions, because that's taken us about 19 weeks to get through one question. Davey also says, do you think something like golf, for example, could ever replace the bikes?
Oh, great.
As in, what bikes bring to you?
Yeah, I'm liking these questions. The simple answer is yes. Yeah, I think it could. I think having a shared purpose amongst people that you enjoy spending time with can bring you a level of joy regardless of what the thing is. I think golf, as an example, is very, very technical, and my brain likes technicality. So a bit like trials motorcycling, it's not about speed, it's about clutch control and about doing things very precisely. So, yeah, I think golf could, absolutely. But fortunately, at least right now, I've got bikes and I'm still able-bodied to ride them, and that for me is my thing. But yes,
you broke on that last bike. Fortunately for now,
Fortunately for now, I'm still able-bodied and I can ride a motorcycle and enjoy it. So for now, bikes are my thing. But yes, I do think golf. I'm not a fan of golf, but I do think other things could bring me, some, if not all, of the joy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's it's going to be different for everybody, isn't it? It could be absolutely. It could be knitting, isn't it? For some people, it's that whatever it is that allows people to. I would suggest. Obviously, I'm not mental health trained, so I've got absolutely no knowledge or experience about this. I'm talking out my arse here, probably. But I would imagine anything that allows you to focus on something, to the extent whereby you can sort of switch that part of your brain off that's worrying about whatever it is, noise. If you can, anything that allows you to switch the noise off for a second, and anything that possibly brings you into contact with people, just whatever it is. You like going to the cinema? Well, maybe not the cinema, because you can hardly sit and discuss things when you're at the cinema.
No, but I just think a shared joy with other people, regardless of what that is can bring you that escapism. The thing that
clubs,
right?
Anything,
anything, right? And I mean, look, that's why pubs have become such community centres over the years, right? Because actually, there's a lot of talk that goes on in a pub between men and things that they don't talk to their wives about or their partners about, right?
That's a good point. That I mean, look at the effect the closure of the village pub has on the village community. That's a massive effect.
Huge.
It's because it's the hub for people to get together. Everyone gets together. Everyone talks.
It's where people used to air their. Well, they used to front up against people that had wronged them, and they'd sort out their differences. They'd also have a couple of beers. Their inhibitions would drop, and then they'd talk about the things that keep them up at night. I'm not necessarily. I know we've had a couple of beers, but I'm not necessarily condoning alcohol as escapism. But I do think those environments where you get to hang out with your pals and talk candidly is important. I think for me, the things that other sports, and I have done other sports in the past that don't bring me, is I feel with motorcycling. There's a journey, a beginning and an end, and it's only me that can create the travel between those two places, if that makes sense, or several places, but you know what I mean, broken down two places.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So for me personally, the thing that I get a real buzz off on is the journey and the things that come with that. So yeah, for me, motorcycling is the thing, but never say never. Maybe I'll play golf one day.
Davey says, you have a 790 KTM. How many times is it broken down? Everyone loves asking these
I knew this would come at some point. You know what? When I was driving home here, I was like, how long will it be until someone says, how's the dairy milk cams in your KTM? Yeah, Davey, honestly, Davey, I tell you, that is a source of mental health woes for me, that bike. So you made the hair stand up on the back of my neck because I'm so worried about that bike breaking down. So far, so good. It's an older bike. It's a 2020 KTM, which was one of the bad ones, supposedly. It's still under 10K. So far, I've not had any issues with it. I'm actually going to pull the rocker off next month and check the valves and the cans, just because I've heard that some of them had some tight shims, some exhaust shims were tight out the factory. So I'm going to check them because if they are, then that could affect the cams. But so far, so good, mate. Something I will say about that bike, right, is KTM pissed me off in many ways in terms of, it's proven now they're really struggling. But in terms of what I do with it, which is a true 50-50 bike, I ride it off-road as much as I do on-road. nothing else that I've ridden in a big bike gives me the thrill off road as that 790. Like the balance of the bike, where the fuel tank sits, the way the engine, the sort of slightly different angle in that dairy milk cammed parallel twin. It is, as an off-road bike, as in a big bike that goes off-road, it is truly brilliant. But yeah, I won't lie, it is definitely a point of concern for me.
I agree. I think it's the most engaging bike out there. KTMs for me. KTMs bring me the biggest smile on my face when I ride them. And by all rights, I should have a KTM in the garage, but I'm not willing to take that, or haven't been willing to take that leap in terms of the possible doubt.
I'm just jealous anyway,
service.
Bruce. I'm just jealous anyway because I'm too short to ride a GS. So, because what's that old saying? Like, there's GS riders, and then there's people that call them shit because they're not tall enough to ride them. And
mate, the new GS, the 1300 GS, it's lower than it's ever been, and it's to the detriment of people like me. Like to the big lumps that historically were attracted to the GS because it was a big tank of a bike, and it felt in proportion compared to all the other sort of Japanese and European bikes that are out there. I love the GS.
That's why you liked it.
They're making it smaller now, so like it's not as the standard GS is not as comfortable for me as a 6'3" person. It's not as comfortable now as it used to be. The adventure is, but I don't want the adventure. I like the GS. Anyway.
The thing I find as well with those bikes is I actually put a slightly lower seat, like a more sculpted seat on my 790. And what I suddenly realised is that what that does, it sits me further into the bike, but it doesn't change where the position of the dash is, of course.
Oh, right.
So actually, like, as a shorter guy, I'm 5'8" if I really stand up and stretch. It actually, having a lower seat doesn't necessarily make the riding experience nicer. It makes coming to a junction easier. Yeah. But actually being on the bike, it doesn't make any easier or nicer because it just sits my head lower down. So visibility suffers, So, I don't know what bike down the line I'll go for. I mean, this 790 is great off-road, but I have a few ideas that I'd like to do which are a bit more road bias. I'll let people into a little secret, which is kind of embarrassing, but I'm a bit of a harbour lover. I really like coastal harbours, like working harbours.
Oh yeah.
And my mates take the piss. My wife takes the piss out of me all the time. But I've stuck to my guns with it for so long now that they kind of stopped taking the piss because they're like, oh no, he really does like a harbour. He is weird, but he actually does like them. So I have this a bit of a pipe dream to circumnavigate the UK, documenting harbours that I visit on motorbike.
No, that would be a niche channel.
Yeah, that would be. yeah. But if I get to break that up and do that in pieces, I probably in the future would want to do that on something that's a bit more road biased than the 790. But I don't know. It would probably still be. It probably still would be a 21-inch front wheeled bike, but I'm just not sure what that would be. I don't know. We'll see.
Going back to KTMs, have you seen, actually, I don't know if it's, I got the press release today, but I don't know if it's actually gone out to the public yet. They've just brought in a 4-year warranty, I think, for all LCA engine bikes from, I think it's from 2022, onwards. They all now. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I did read an article that was officially released in October last year that said, as long as a 790 back to 2019 has been reasonably well maintained, they will honour out of warranty cam replacements.
Oh, wow.
So the way I see it is if it goes wrong, I'll have a 50-50 chance of having some free cams put back in it. And if not, I'll have a slightly hefty bill to put some new cams in it myself. But yeah, you know what? It's for me, when I was buying it, for having a true 50-50 bike, I genuinely did not know. Like Matt and Tim, who are on the Icebreaker routes that some guys may have seen on the channel, they ride Africa Twins. Tim won't mind me saying he's not. He's a very good. His road craft of riding a road bike is far superior to mine. He's a much better road rider than I am. Off road, he's at a lower level than Matt and I, from a confidence perspective. Matt is a very good off road rider. I've ridden trials bikes with him for years, and he throws that 1100 Africa Twin round, like with 2 false hips. I must add. But that Africa Twin is a big bike. And for me, there just wasn't anything else available short of buying like a EXCF 500 and putting a rally front end on it or something. There just wasn't anything that offered me that sort of off-road performance other than 7 or an 890, but that's changing, I think. Other brands are making some really good bits of kit. So
there's a massive movement in that sort of middleweight market now. Well, actually, from sort of 300 odd cc upwards, isn't there?
Upwards,
In fact, BMW are launching the 450 GS. That could be quite an impressive little off-road bike. That.
Yeah, is that the one I've seen in blue that was at? Yeah. My only concern about that is it's not got a 21-inch front wheel on it. It's got a 19-inch front wheel in it. So finding good off-road 50/50 tyres for it is
so. Is that 19-inch front wheel for definite? Because it was a concept initially, and the concept got such a reaction that the BMW have now turned around and gone, okay, I think we're going to make this. So they may well alter it.
Maybe they'll change it, yeah. From what I heard end of last year was, it had a smaller front wheel, but let's hope they've listened and put a 21 in it. But I mean, they now make the F900 GS?
Yeah.
Which looks,
it's a nice bike, man.
Yeah. Do you follow Adam Ryman Motology at all?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he can ride a bike, right? And I've watched a few reviews of him riding that F900, and he really likes it. So I mean, other brands are bringing out stuff that is directly comparable to KTM's off-road ability now. So yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with it.
It will very much.
Last one from Davey. He says, ask him about his dog.
Ebby. That's cool. I'm glad he's either seen that on Instagram, right? Like you liked it last night while I was on OS Maps. She was prawned up next to the radiator. Ebby. She's a nearly 6.5-year-old Sprolly. Do you know what? I'll tell you the story behind Ebby because it's quite a funny story.
Sprolly,
Sprolly, Springer Spaniel Border Collie cross, cool. Yeah. I'm looking over here because my wife has a pinboard behind her desk, and she has some really cute pictures on the wall of Ebby. I wonder if I just try and show you guys so that some of you can see some images of Ebby. Can you see? Can you make those out?
Yeah. Can yeah.
So she's wicked, man. We in 2018, Rach and I, we'd had dogs in the past, but we had a bit of a hiatus without them. We were looking to get another dog, and a friend of ours worked on a farm down the road from where we live, and it was a farm that had diversified from your classic farming and was taking underprivileged and like neurodiverse kids, I guess, and they would have residency, like do you do this? Like a residency, I'm drawing a housing block with my hands, like as if anyone really knows what the fuck I'm doing, right? So the kids could go and stay on the farm and learn how to look after farm animals. So anyway, long story short, they had a spaniel that lived in the house, like a pedigree spaniel, and on the farm was a classic black and white working border collie. And they had a fling. Mum got pregnant, and then Mum had the morning after injection, which I didn't even know was a thing for dogs, but apparently it is.
No.
And it didn't work, and she had a litter. Anyway, Ebby's not from that litter. Mum and Dad had another fling, like a year later or something. Mum had
love is love.
Love is love, right? Yeah. You can't stop it. Mum had a second morning after injection, didn't work, had a litter. after that, poor Dad had his nuts cut off. But Ebby is from the second encounter, the second litter, and she's cool. She's a sprolly. We've had her 6.5 years. We've not gone down the kids line, my wife and I, and I don't think we're going to. So she's basically the surrogate kid. She's she's awesome. She's awesome. So thanks awesome. Dave, for asking, man. She's more. I'll put out more pictures of Ebby.
Excellent. Pictures of the dog always do well. Yeah. Right. Can we have our pee break? Those two beers have gone through me. All right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's another couple of questions for us to get through when we get back.
That sounds
you got
great
enough
to
time?
me.
You all right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Have you got? I'll go and make a cup of tea. I'll be back.
This is it. Right, we're back in the room, folks. We're back in the room.
Yeah, I've got my
excellent.
Got my brew on the go. So
got your brew. Good work. Good work. Right, next question. Andy, evening, gents. Hope this finds you well. Adam, I read your post about your experience when you had to have your appendix removed. Did you get a chance to feed back to the team your thoughts as what may be routine to them is absolutely not to the person having the op?
Wow. Yeah. Wow, Andy, firstly, thank you for that. Was some time ago. That post was pretty emotional, actually. For those of you that haven't seen it, basically, I 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I had to have an emergency appendix operation, and I'd actually been riding the motorbike in the morning and had some stomach pain. Didn't really know what it was, but because of mental health stuff, I occasionally get some like gut issues that flare up, bit of your classic IBS type stuff. So I just put it down to like, I need to go home and eat something. I've been out on the enduro bike all morning and we'd been doing like moto sessions on a track and I was worn out. So anyway, I went home and I was crippled over, and classically Rach was away on her sister's hen weekend. And the dog was at home by herself, and I got home and I was like bent over the kitchen side, and I did that classic thing, Bruce, which I'm pretty sure all men do, which is, I should probably go to hospital. I'm not going to hospital, but you need to go to hospital. Yeah, but I'm not going to fucking hospital. And then it got to the point where I was like, I need to go to hospital. So so what I didn't say earlier is a lot of my anxiety is health anxiety related. A lot of it is about the physiological part of my body working well, and when things don't feel right, that's what makes me anxious. That's where my anxiety is rooted. Other people have social anxiety and other types of anxiety, but mine is rooted in health anxiety. So going to the doctors or going to hospital to me is like grade A terrifying, less so now, but I've got better. But so having to go to hospital with, my main support channel, which is Rach in these moments, was like away, turn up at hospital, and my blood pressure was like 180 over 145, like through the roof.
It's like a worst case scenario in your mind.
Yeah, man. In my, as far as the chimp's concerned, in my head, I'm going to war. Like I've come out the trenches, and I had 48 hours. And again, I don't want to get into the NHS whether it's good or bad, but they did a pretty shit job when I was there. They just wanted to cut me open, and I was saying, excuse me. You're not cutting me open until you've done an ultrasound and definitively said that my appendix is swollen and it needs taken out. Oh, well, you're showing all the symptoms of it. And I was just not having it. I was like, I'm leaving. And I got up to leave and had like a full blown panic attack meltdown in the middle of a ward. And there's people moving around me. And I'm this full grown 38-year-old man in a gown with no underwear on, laying on the floor in a ward. Sweating and crying. No, it is hilarious. I mean, we should laugh about it because, I mean, it is, picture the scene, right? Like I
try not to laugh. Yes.
It is hugely embarrassing, but this is real life and that's what happens. So, whatever. And, they just didn't get what was going on. And then basically, long story short, I went and had the appendix out and, it was okay. But, no is the answer to Andy. I didn't have a chance to feed back to the team because actually, sadly, it happened on a Sunday and they had like bank staff nurse in overnight, and it was all just a bit just didn't have a chance to really build a relationship with anyone in there. I just went in and had it out, and they sent me home to recover type thing. But it was a pretty, just, I don't want to make too much of a big deal. Like, people go through far, far worse, but it was a rough, time, including having my bare ass out in the middle of a ward crying on the floor. So, it's,
I wonder if like the medical staff, nurses and things like that, I wonder if they get actual training in how to not only deal but recognize issues like that. Because the reason I'm saying is, in the old bill, I would say, God, in the 18 odd years I was in, probably 95% of my time was taken up with mental health. It's generally the people you're dealing with and the situations you're dealing with generally have arisen through some form of mental health, whether that's a regular current thing somebody's dealing with, or they're just in such an emotional state that they've triggered. They are in like a schizophrenia. They're in some state of mental health. They might never have experienced that before, but they're in there. But we didn't really get any input on that. I mean, you were told, look out for it.
Yeah.
But
no, I don't think they get much
of it.
I don't think they get much training in it. But in their defense, I think what is really interesting, right, is it goes back to, you remember earlier I was talking about when I saw a therapist, they don't get emotionally het up with you when you're telling your story. I think the reality of a situation like that is they had a job to do. I needed to have my appendix out, and spending too much time focusing on the event that was happening, they probably looked at it and went, right, this guy's having some form of a panic attack. It will pass, which is something I've learned the reason I don't actually have any panic attacks really anymore is because I have accepted. Here's a great tip for some of your listeners, actually. And I've only kind of mastered it in the last sort of year. When I have started to get a bit of an anxiety or a panic attack coming on, rather than fighting it off, which is the natural response, is to be like, no, I don't want this to happen. It's terrifying. It's fucking horrible. Please don't happen. Please don't happen. What I actually do now is verbally out loud, I just go, okay, let's be having you then. Like, if you're going to happen, if it's in the middle of the shop, or I have to pull over into the services, or it's sat at my desk at work. Like, as I say, I haven't had one for a long time, but the turning point for me was to actually just go, yeah, let's go. And do you know what? I'd say 9 times out of 10 now, it just never comes, just never happens.
All right. Is that an acceptance thing then? Is that like an acceptance, right? It's going to happen. Let's just deal with what comes. Yeah.
My understanding of that side of mental health, having had a lot of therapy, is it's the resistance that brings that on, not necessarily the panic attack itself. The more you resist it, the more it happens. So what I found is that complete, level of acceptance where, right, okay, well, let's just do it. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to feel scared for a while. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And then it will pass and I'll get on with my day. 9 times out of 10, it just, so arcing back, I think the nurses probably went, okay, this guy's having some sort of panic attack, anxiety attack. It'll pass. Sure enough, it did. They helped me back up, went back to the bed. And then I had my appendix out, and that was it. So
as soon as you started saying that, it struck a chord with me, and I started thinking about my own personal experience in the old bill of dealing with these sort of things. And that's exactly the mindset we had with things, was that we haven't got the time. If you did have the time, if you had the time to sort of sit, I have had the stereotypical people on the ledge or on the roof ready to jump off a bridge. I've had that. And, if you feel that you have time to maybe just try and sit and reason and deal, and sometimes you're there for ages. And then, maybe a negotiator will have to turn up and they take over, and you can be there for days. But there's other times when there's like an imminent threat to life, whether their life or somebody else's life. And to be perfectly honest, that's exactly what you just said there. You identify what is the imminent threat here? What is the imminent thing that I need to deal with? And you just, doesn't matter if they're having a mental episode or not. If you have to jump on him or drag him back or, thump him, if you have to do something to reduce or negate that imminent threat to life, whatever it happens to be, you do, don't you? So,
of course.
the medical staff are going to be in exactly the same boat. What is the immediate threat here?
Right.
That we need to deal with that.
Yeah. And I think as hard as that was for me to deal with in the moment, like their job at hand at that point was to make sure I was medically okay. And that's what they did. So yeah, good question, Andy. But yeah, no, in that instance, I didn't really have a chance to talk to anyone about it. But if I did, then I probably would have.
Got you.
Yeah.
Second question: as a rider of two wheels, both petrol and human powered, how do the public respond to you on each type of bike? And if different, why do you think this is?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
That is a great question. So let's just loosely touch on when I'm riding a mountain bike, the type of mountain biking I do is contentious at times because we often ride bikes on forestry or NRW, National Resource Wales land, and it's not necessarily illegal, but we're tolerated as using that space. And that causes some contention with other users of that space, be it walkers or dog walkers, runners, horse riders, or whatever. Now, the thing that I make a point of is that I'm the guy that my mates get pissed off because I'm the guy that is like, kill everyone with kindness. And I'll stop and what I often find is you can diffuse a situation with fact and kindness. Sometimes you just can't argue with stupid. So you have to acknowledge that that's the case and just move on. Right. But 9 times out of 10, if you're just willing to have a conversation with people, people are interested in what you're up to. When I'm riding the adventure bike and adventure bike, I do like that term. When I'm riding the big bike and I stop in a town or whatever, I just find that people are really keen to have a chat with you because I think they just acknowledge that you're on a journey somewhere. And that I think most people know that riding a motorcycle, generally speaking, generalizing, you're not doing that for a job. You're generally doing that for pleasure. So if you get out of a car, you might be like, I need to go to the shops or I'm on my way to work. Whereas on a motorbike, I think the general understanding is that you're out for a journey on good roads or riding trails or whatever, right? So people are just a bit more interested.
People think you're having fun, don't they? You're living a dream. Yeah.
But I have faced a lot of standoff and sort of animosity riding both. I've got a 2-stroke enduro bike that I ride on lanes, and I obviously take the 790 off road quite a lot. I did have faced a lot of animosity towards me, even on what is technically a highway, on a legal byway. I've faced a lot of sometimes aggression being there, even though you're supposed to be there, which is
I've had people. I mean, I have probably been off road half a dozen times in the UK, I would say, and out of them, I can think of a couple of times when I've had people have put wire across trails, people have put tree trunks across the trails, people have just stopped and let you have it, basically, just giving you both barrels, as they're walking.
Which is hilarious to do that with you because, you did 18 years of learning how to deal with people like that. So,
but I'm not in uniform anymore.
No, but I mean, you can probably articulate a factual argument in a good manner because you would have had to give evidence and probably interview people and whatever. So,
if I want to, I know. Yeah.
No, you know what I mean. I think people are really shit at dealing with people like you when they're in the wrong, and then you articulate a really polite, well put together argument for why they're wrong. And because I'm not bad at it, and I often have OS maps open, and I'll often be like, well, okay, how about we just look at this map together and you can see that I'm actually allowed to be here. And that's kind of what I meant earlier about not able to, you can't argue with stupid or reason with stupid, because then you go from having what you think is an intelligent argument to them just swearing at you and shouting expletives. And at that point, you're like, right, I mean, it doesn't matter who's right here. I'm not going to no one can win, you know. So yeah, in answer directly to that question, I think people generally, humans are good humans. You alluded to that earlier, mate, when you said about most people are good humans. And I think generally speaking, when people see you out on two wheels and you're partaking in a journey or you're just having fun, generally speaking, people are interested in what you're up to, you know? Neither one is more or less, but I would say the easiest interactions are definitely when I'm on the big bike, because I think more people acknowledge that is like you're on a trip or something, you know.
Interesting.
Personally, it'll be different for everyone, but
and obviously all cyclists are see you next Tuesdays, obviously.
Yeah, that is quite often the acknowledgement is the opinion, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are some. There are a few. That's the problem, right? But
so it comes back to people being sat in traffic. You get it on motorbikes as well, don't you? But people are sat in traffic in their car, and the cyclist comes straight by them and then probably goes straight through a red light.
Yeah.
Or you're on a car and you're in a massive queue of traffic, and when you eventually get to the front of the traffic, it's because there's 6 of the fuckers all taking up an entire lane, and you're just like,
and I think that is much more common in in a town or a city, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
But I do, to be controversial here, and maybe to throw that back, not necessarily at you, but just at that general perception of cyclists, I do think that there is an opportunity for us to look at that. Like, I'll give you a great example, right? I've been in the bicycle industry for over 10 years. The last 5 years, there's been a lot of e-bikes around, right? Mm-hmm. And I have been a type 3 fun person, like we spoke to earlier on. So I'm no alien to like heart rate redlining, blowing through my backside for hours on end. So I enjoy the struggle, right? But when e-bikes came about, I was an early adopter of e-bikes. So I rode muscular, analog, acoustic bikes, and I also rode e-bikes. And amongst a lot of my friends and people I know in the bike industry, at least initially, there was a lot of, you'd be going up a climb on your human powered bike, and an e-bike would come whizzing past you and you're blowing through your ass. And the immediate reaction was like, fucking e-bikes, rah, rah, rah. And the thing that I used to think was like, it's your interpretation of that scenario that causes you stress, because actually, like, there's nothing stopping you going and buying an e-bike if you can afford to, of course. So realistically, I think sometimes cyclists get a bad name because they happen to be, you're in a car and you're stuck in traffic and you wish you weren't, and a cyclist goes soaring past you, and actually the deep-rooted emotion that you feel there is actually, envy. I'm stuck in a fucking car and they're getting where they're going quicker than I am. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you at all that there are cyclists that don't obey the rules that everyone else has to abide by. But equally, I think sometimes it's just like human nature to get pissed off at people because they're doing something that you can't do, you know?
Yeah, you see it on a motorbike when you're I see it when I'm filtering, like say on the M25 all the time. M25 is gridlock, so you filter on the bike.
Yeah, of course.
And I would say 9 people out of 10 will, if they do see you, move out the way.
Yeah.
But there's always that one person who you see look in the mirrors and then they literally try and block you. They'll close the gap.
Every time. So
it's human nature though, isn't it? As you said, it is human nature.
Yeah. It is
just
mate.
Human nature.
It is. It's a sad fact, but it is.
Yeah, well. Last question. For Bruce, have you sought advice on bicycle maintenance for your big trip? From Adam.
Oh, tell me.
Okay, at the very start of this podcast, I think it was, when did I start this? 2020, I started this. Mm-hmm. During COVID, during lockdown. Yeah. I think lockdown 1, I think it was. I said, so I put it out there, which means it has to happen. That's my sort of mentality now, that I want to cycle around the UK. And by that, I mean like pretty much the coastal right round the UK.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not a cyclist. I used to cycle as a kid, and I used to cycle in my mid-20s, like 6 miles each way, commuting to a nick I used to work in. That was it. And I haven't cycled since I cycled once when I got back from the world trip, mid 2014, and I don't think I even did a mile, and I nearly had a heart attack. But I am, like, I'm about 4 stone over the weight that I'm comfortable being at.
Okay.
I feel like a fat old man. And to me, it's just like, right, set yourself a challenge and let's go for it.
Well,
so
not
it's going to happen.
No small challenge, mate. That's
yeah, but I'm a bit like that.
no, me too. Yeah. I get it.
Like
I get it.
I kind of perverse. I take this weird mentality that if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So I'll not often push myself, but when I do, I'll really push myself. And if it lights a fire, then that's what does it for me. Like the world trip, doing it on the Jigsaw. People say you can't do that, so it was like, yeah, fuck it.
No. Absolutely, man. And well, I'll let you into another little side to my life. I was a very fat kid. In my early 20s, I was a 20-a-day smoker, binge drinking, recreational drug user. My late teens and early 20s were pretty chaotic. I'm bearing in mind I'm 5'8" if I stretch. When I was 19, 20, I was 103 kilos.
Wow.
So I was a big lad.
So what's that in real money? 103. That is
15 stone.
15 and 15 and a bit stone. Yeah.
At 5'7", 5'8". I was. Do you remember Space Hoppers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I basically looked like a space hopper.
You're saying it like that's a bad thing, It's the role I fill now.
You're 6 foot. I've got a mate who's 6'2" and he's a big lad. He can carry it off. When you're 5'7" and 100 kilos, you just look like a weeble. It's not a good look, Anyway, over the space of 2 years, I lost best part of 35 kilos. And this is just before I got into the bike industry. I actually was a personal trainer. I did a load of personal trainers qualifications, and I was a personal trainer for 4 years shortly, and I did that shortly after I met Rach. So 2 things here, mate. Like in all seriousness, if this is a challenge that you want to do and you want some help and advice, it's too much to talk about now. But like, if you want some help with it, man, I'll openly give you my time for that. And if you want some help with bike stuff, I work for a large bicycle brand, well-known bicycle brand. If you need parts or bikes or whatever, just hit me up. I can help you out with that. I can hook you up with some parts and with a bike if you need to. Or
that is incredibly generous, and I love you for it. You utter bastard. Now that I'm now another rung closer to it. It's like, shit.
You wouldn't want it any other way, brother. You wouldn't want it any other way. This journey led you here just so that I could step you closer to the altar.
And people say to me, so when are you going to start training? And I'm like, I'm not training. I'm just going for it. I'm just doing it. I'll get fit along the way. Because in my head, I'm like, this is 4 to 6 months of my life. This is not going to be a 4-week challenge. You're talking 4.5 to maybe 5,500 miles. I don't even know the exact mileage yet.
Well, I only know because I was looking at motorbike cycling around it. It's about, I believe, that if you went to every harbour, it's 5,400. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you could come and do your harbours.
You would be less because you wouldn't be boring as fuck like me and sticking your head into every harbour. But it's circa 5,000, mate. Yeah.
So for me, it's the logistics of it. That. Yeah. All I'm thinking of, I'm not thinking of you can't do that. I'm thinking I can do that. I'm going to be in absolute tatters. I'm going to be in bits. I appreciate that. I'm going to be away for a long time. But I just think, my wife's got a job. We've got the dog. We've got the cats. We've got a house here. I can't. It's just selfish of me to walk off and leave all that to her. So it's like, logistically, how do I make this happen? My wife, if it's something I want to do, my wife will be like, okay, if you're going to do it, go and do it. Like she was about the world trip. But,
could you do it in, I guess and I know, well, I don't know, but I get the feeling I can understand how your brain works with these things because we're probably not too dissimilar. I also had this idea that I wanted to ride the TET, the Trans Euro Trail.
Yeah.
I wanted to ride the whole of the TET in one trip. And my mates were like, well, just break it down into bite-sized chunks. Do a bit, go home.
Wow.
Do a bit, go home. And my brain, and this is to complete pitfall of, of my life. I can't do that. I just can't.
No. I'm the same.
You
fail. You fail if you do that. You've not done it.
Yeah, but like we said earlier, I don't even know if it's failing that's a problem for me. I just doesn't feel complete. That's what it is. It just...
Yeah, that's it. Because if anyone else did that, if anyone else did it in stages, I wouldn't think twice about it.
No,
I'd be like,
right, exactly. You'd be like, well done.
But for me, I've set myself the challenge of going around the UK.
Yeah.
So I'm going around the UK. I'm not doing a bit and coming back.
And do you know what, man? I stand here having had this conversation about being honest and not being fear of failure. And I'm going to be totally brutally honest with you. Do not do that in chunks. Just fuck off and do it. Because if that is what you desire, you won't be happy with anything less, What I will say is it's okay to say I'm going to do all of it, get halfway and fail. That is okay. But you have to set the target of doing it in one, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
It's not happening, Adam. It's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm not, if I go, then I'm doing it.
Yeah.
If I have to carry the bike on my back, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
It's
well,
happening.
like I say, man, if you do need any help or set up advice, then it's the world I've moved in for over a decade, so I'm sure I can help you out with stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Andy, you're an utter bar steward for bringing that up. Thanks, mate. Cheers. They never let me forget about this, mate. It's probably every podcast somebody pipes up about it.
Good. It keeps us accountable, mate. Yeah. I just if you don't mind, it was just something I wanted to tell people about that I've got coming up.
Please do.
Before I forget about it. I'm going to start. The channel is going to be multidiscipline, and I'm going to see how that goes. And I'm going to separate different things with playlists. So the general shit talk and fun stuff that I just get up to on bikes with mates will be general content, and then there'll be some more sort of like mental health focused playlists that are on the channel. And that was my idea. Although I'll stand corrected if that's not the way to do it, but whatever.
It's your channel. Do whatever you like.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to start a series on there called Ride and Reflect. And what Ride and Reflect is going to be is me doing either mountain biking or cycling or motorcycling, and with some people that are going to come on that show. There will be sit-down situations like this when there's a topic that requires a bit more focus, but generally it's going to try and be. I'm going to try and do a video-style podcast whilst out doing the thing, which poses all sorts of challenges with audio and video. But I'm just going to try and make it work because I think it would be a cool way to discuss things. So that's coming. Got a few people lined up, going to be dropping over the next few weeks. If anyone's interested and wants to watch, appreciate some engagement on that in terms of questions and stuff. But I might hit you up if that's okay, Bruce, with some tips on. Currently, I use a DJI Osmo camera, and I use a DJI Mic 2 Bluetooth, which so far for me has been one of the best. Like, it's so good at, like, I can stick my head over the screen at 70 and I can still have a conversation. It's really quite impressive. My backup cameras that I use for other stuff, I've got a GoPro 10 and a GoPro 9 that I use for a bit of like B-roll stuff. But the GoPro 10 I use on Matt's helmet generally if there's two of us out riding. But I'm trying to get away from GoPro personally because it's been so unreliable for me in the past.
Same. I've moved from them as well.
Yeah, DJI for me at least has been really good, but I've only got an Osmo 4, and I know the Osmo 5 can now connect to the Cardo system, can't it, via like 2 audio channels or something? Which
I've bought the Action 5. I've not used it yet, but it has two separate audio channels, so you can use 2 mics. It's a bit naughty how Insta360 do this as well. They publicize that you can now you can now have it integrated with your Cardo headset. What that does is that it allows you to control the camera via voice commands via the Cardo set.
Right.
It's not that you're recording the cut. To my knowledge, it's not. Actually, no. I'll cancel that. Now you can record the comms. But
Yeah.
it's very tinny. It's very treble heavy, typical sort of Bluetooth.
Yeah.
It's very, very heavy.
Yeah.
I still use, I have a setup in my lid where I have two audio feeds coming into one. So I have a stereo input into the camera. And for that stereo input, I have an input coming from my lav mic, and I have an input coming from the headphone output for the comm system. So I use a splitter basically in the lead that would go and plug into your headphones for the comm system. I put it through an audio splitter. So that then generates two outputs from one input. Right?
Makes sense.
And one goes into the headphones and one goes into the stereo splitter that then goes into one input into the camera.
Okay.
So,
and is that your camera on your chin piece?
For me, yes. So for you, you could still use a wireless setup. You could still have. Or could you?
Well, I've also I have got a Rode lav mic that I use as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And
this was something I'm going to test because I've bought the mic. I've got the mic 2 and the Mini. I bought that as well.
Oh, the mic 2 is really good, man.
Yeah, I wanted to see, can I have the mic 2 and plug in like an input from my comm system in there? And will that effectively then, say if the mic 2 set up as stereo, will that then send two separate audio channels to the camera? One audio channel is me talking, like on the mic 2, and the other is the input from the comm system. I haven't tested that yet. That'd be interesting.
That's what I would really. Well, the only problem with the mic 2 is it doesn't have a 3.5mm jack. It only has a USB-C.
Okay, yeah, so that will work, yeah.
So that I don't think that will work. But I think the new Osmo 5, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that now does have a 3.5mm jack input, doesn't it?
The Action 5? I can't remember.
No, anyway.
So I haven't even opened the box. So I've just got such a backlog of content. I'm not even.
Maybe you and I could. I'd be keen to get your thoughts like offline at some point, because I'd really, really like to. It's not so bad when I'm mountain biking because we can do the interviewing on flat bits of pedaling, and one mic will actually probably be fine for picking up two videos, and one mic can pick up both audios. And then I'm going to intersperse some of the interviewing with some gnarly downhill scary stuff to kind of keep people engaged. That's the plan. But
montage.
With the yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I did a bit of it last week in that video, and people were really like, "Oh, it's a really great way of breaking down some heavy talking with some light-hearted stuff." So I'll do a bit more of that. But the motorcycling stuff obviously does rely on. I could have two mics and we turn everything on at the same time and then just sync everything up at the end of it. But it would be nice. Yeah. Oh, okay. Fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the way that I did when I started the podcast, I was actually thinking of doing it bike orientated, and I did one episode with another YouTuber called Mr. Fish, where we went out on the bikes and we basically had a podcast, but just whilst we were out riding the bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way you do it on the bikes is you each have a camera. So at least one camera. Everyone's got a camera on the chin. You don't necessarily need to have like a, say you're chatting to someone who doesn't have a setup ready to have a camera on the chin. You can get this gripper mount from Dango Design. So it's just a very good gripper. That just
it goes under the chin, doesn't it?
It's really good, yeah.
I've seen one.
Whack the camera in there, and then all you need to do is just run a lav mic from the camera straight into that person's helmet. It's nice and easy to put in. It's nice and easy to take out. It's not a permanent solution. And then you have the same in your lid. And all you'll need to do with these modern cameras, certainly with the DJIs and the Instas, the battery lasts about an hour and a half. So you could, at the start, you can face each other, hit record, slap the visor down to sync everything up, or clap, however you want to do it. And just go off and write. And then you've got the comms kit anyway, so you can hear what each other are saying.
Yes.
And you just use the audio from the camera, from the lav mic going into the camera, which is going to be much better quality than the comm stuff anyway.
No, it's a great shout, mate. Yeah, that was my other way of thinking, actually. So I'm glad you've clarified that for me. So yeah, we'll have a crack anyway, mate. It's we'll have a crack and see how it goes, eh?
Nice. Be interested to see how it turns out, mate. Nice one.
Yeah.
Right, that's all the questions, pal. We've done it. It's
Thank
not
you.
bad. What is that? 2 hours 45 minutes. It's not bad at all.
Oh, okay. I thought I did a fair old chunk of waffling in there, so I wouldn't blame you if you cut some of that out. But
no, not at all. I don't edit generally, so yeah, we just let it. I'll edit the pee breakout.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, look, I just like to say, yeah, I really appreciate you sort of get me on. I was aware that when I just sort of cheekily was like, look, I'd love to come on and chat, and you were just like, I don't know, I'm not completely, I don't buy into the woo-woo of too much of like energy, but there is an element, I think, of like people just kind of vibe off each other's characters, and I think if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So I feel like it was the right time, you know, and although it's early days for me, I'm really, really grateful that you, gave me the time to come and have a chat.
It's my pleasure. I'm always looking for people to come on this podcast. So, I welcome being approached, and, you contacted me. I had a look to see what you're doing, and I thought, yeah, I'm loving this. I'm digging it. I think this would be a really interesting conversation, as it has been.
Man.
So,
yeah, no, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, mate. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And thank you for the questions from your listeners. And hopefully got some interesting bits dropping in the next few weeks, months that some of them might enjoy. So.
Adam, I really think you've got a good thing going on, mate. I've seen your early content so far, and I think that's going to strike a chord with a lot of people. Thanks. And
thanks, brother.
I can see you going good places with the channel and helping a lot of people, most importantly.
Yeah. So, I look forward to that.
Awesome. Dude, is there any shout outs you want to give before we go?
No, I mean, there's too many people to thank for me along the way, man. I'm just, as I get older and I get a bit deeper into this journey, I'm just genuinely grateful for the small. I intentionally keep the crew of people around me relatively small. I mean, I've always got the time of day for new people, but like I've got my people, and I'm, they keep my feet on the ground, and I'm just grateful for them, So, and I'm grateful for people that have commented and watched the first few clips, and it's. It's humbling. I'm enjoying myself,
Awesome. It's the main thing, mate. Never lose sight of that. We do this to have fun and to enjoy. I've lost sight of that, and a couple of times along the way so far. We're doing this to have fun. It's not about numbers. 100%. We're doing it to enjoy.
I'd really like to stay. Let's stay in touch and see if we can hook up for a ride at some point, eh? And
mate, 100%. I'll be up for that.
We'll chink a beer together rather than virtually over the screen, eh?
Let's do it.
Hey, don't forget to hit me up genuinely if you do want some talk bike, push bikes and trip. And,
mate, you're involved now. You're part of my support team. That's it.
It's happening. No question.
All right, where do people go if they want to find out more?
Absolutely. It's such a noob to this. Yeah. You can hit me up on Bikes for Brains. It's FOR, not the number 4. So it's Bikes for Brains as it's written on Instagram. You can DM me on there, the same, Bikes for Brains on YouTube. I do have a Patreon page, but I'm not shouting about it yet because I want to make sure that I've got something of quality to be offering people before I start asking people for their hard-earned, So it exists, but you'll hear about it when I'm ready to share something that's worthwhile,
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I'll leave all those links down below, folks, so make sure you check them out and share the love if it's something that takes your fancy. Dude, It's been an absolute pleasure getting you on. I've really enjoyed this, and I mean this. We'll make this happen for real. Let's meet up and
let's do that.
See what goes. Let's get it done.
Thanks so much.
Folks, hope you've enjoyed. Apologies. Go on, mate.
No, thanks so much. Cheers.
When you meet up in person, you don't get this really annoying, like half-second delay that you get on these these online things.
So true.
Yeah. Folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. Hope you've got something from it. What can we say? Just keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha! Right, dude, let's stop that.